Chapter 3379. Don't tell me it's because of your greed and stinginess? The green-robed Xiaohua mocked. The Jade Archive Xiaohua didn't refute. He stretched out his hand and said, Fellow Taoist, do you have any healing spirit pills? Take some out. Let's not talk about my hair, it's already gone. The scars on my body need to be cleaned up. Don't ruin my handsome face. I'll give it to you, I'll give it to you. I've already prepared them. The green-robed Xiaohua waved his hand and several jade bottles appeared in front of the Jade Archive Xiaohua. It's just that this thing that's neither fire nor water is very strange. I don't know if these spirit pills are useful. Many thanks, fellow Taoist. The Jade Archive Xiaohua took the jade bottles and cupped his hands. I'll try them first. At this moment, the Jade Archive Xiaohua frowned and his expression changed slightly. It seemed that there was another change outside the space. Please! The green-robed Xiaohua raised his hand. The Jade Archive Xiaohua didn't answer and disappeared in a flash. The green-robed Xiaohua stared blankly at the place where the thunder water box disappeared. A burst of starlight appeared in his eyes and then he also disappeared. The Jade Archive Xiaohua came out of the space and hurriedly looked around. However, he saw that the surroundings were still pitch black and there was no special change. Moreover, when Xiaohua used the Heaven's Eye technique again and opened his magic eye, he saw a faint light on the left side. He didn't see any special brilliance. The passage he saw with his magic eye just now also disappeared. His left side was very wide, as if he was in a quiet grassland. Strange. Xiaohua was a little bewildered in his heart, because after opening his Dharma eye, that ominous feeling disappeared again. There's nothing special here. However, Xiaohua also knew that he was now in the void where the space vein was located. Although the void was stable, there was definitely danger. Although he didn't notice any abnormalities, it didn't mean that there was no danger. It was better to be careful. Thinking about it, Xiaohua took out the spirit pills refined by the green-robed Xiaohua. He swallowed a few and applied a few on his body. He felt some coolness coming from where he applied the medicine. Only then did Xiaohua apply the spirit pills all over his body. This time, Xiaohua was in a miserable state. His whole body was riddled with scars. He had used up almost all of the spirit pills given by the green-robed Xiaohua. After applying the spirit pill, Xiaohua took out a Taoist robe and put it on. In the void, defensive treasures might not be useful, so it was better to keep them than waste them. The stingy Xiaohua calculated this well and only wore an ordinary Taoist robe. In fact, if Xiaohua didn't feel awkward in his heart, perhaps he wouldn't even want to wear this Taoist robe. After putting it on, Xiaohua carefully inspected his body. If he didn't inspect it, he wouldn't have known that his body, which he had always been proud of, was actually seriously injured this time. It wasn't just the superficial injuries that Xiaohua had imagined. Under his body, there was an extremely thick part that had turned into rotten wood. What was special was that this rotten wood-like body could actually make Xiaohua feel pain. Just by touching it with his hand, Xiaohua immediately grimaced in pain. The heavens really took pity on me. What is this water-like torrent? Xiaohua couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. It hadn't been long since he'd encountered the torrent and escaped from the spatial tunnel, yet he'd suffered such heavy injuries in such a short period of time. If the spatial tunnel hadn't collapsed, his ending would have been unimaginable. Of course, Xiaohua also knew that it wouldn't be strange if the radiant beast was seriously injured in the void. However, although Xiaohua was seriously injured, the injured part of the earth crystal Yao milk had turned into the world's spirit qi. The majority of this spirit qi was absorbed by his intact body, and a small part was absorbed by his meridians. Although this part of the earth crystal Yao milk was very small, it still made Xiaohua see hope. If it really was the void storm that the radiant beast said, it really could turn the remaining earth crystal Yao milk into the world's spirit qi. But where is this void storm? Xiaohua raised his eyes to look at the pitch-black darkness in the distance, and once again urged the soul cultivator's flying technique to slowly fly forward. This time, Xiaohua was much more vigilant. As he flew forward, he constantly opened his transcendence vision, looking left and right. From time to time, he even tested the direction of the void that he just discovered. However, this time, it was very quiet. For a full 4 hours, he didn't see anything abnormal. But through Xiaohua's transcendence vision, he saw nothing but a faint brilliance. Even the variegated brilliance of the previous void maze couldn't be seen. After a long time, Xiaohua became a little anxious. He didn't have much time. If he couldn't find the passage of the void storm in 3 days, he would have to quickly leave. However, before he could think of any other way, suddenly, in his body, "Pooh!" a muffled sound rang out. A piece of flesh smaller than a sesame seed burst open, and the earth crystal Yao milk contained in this piece of flesh turned into pure spirit qi at the same time. This? Xiaohua was shocked. Just as he was about to use his divine sense to investigate. Pu. 3 consecutive sounds rang out, and 3 more pieces of flesh burst open near that piece of flesh. Not good! Xiaohua's scalp immediately went numb. He suddenly thought of the warning signs he had when he first entered this void. Almost without thinking, he desperately flew in a direction. However, what happened next made Xiaohua tremble with fear. The flesh in his body burst open one after another. Although only small pieces of flesh burst open, these explosions seemed to be connected, and there were more and more of them. Perhaps there was no sound in the void, but in Xiaohua's mind, these explosions were no less than a bolt from the blue. There was nothing more frightening than this strange thing. Who? Xiaohua not only released his divine sense, but also opened his transcendence vision. He even released his Buddhist sense and soul sense one after another. Unfortunately, apart from him, there was no one else in this void. There was no spirit qi of heaven and earth, fluctuations, and so on. Pff. A series of explosions caused Xiaohua's heart to skip a beat. Xiaohua's body had been tempered, his meridians had also been tempered, and even his bloodline had been tempered. However, the heart, liver, spleen, lungs, kidneys, and so on in his body had not been tempered. Although his 5 viscera had been strengthened because of the tempering of his body and his bloodline, they were relatively weak. Although Xiaohua's powerful body was formed from Yao Feng's flesh and blood, his 5 viscera were the same. However, in this strange explosion, Xiaohua could not guarantee that his body was in good condition, let alone that his 5 viscera were safe. Especially when these strange explosions came from the inside. He had no idea how the other party attacked him. What the hell is going on? Xiaohua could only release his divine sense and do his best to check his surroundings. The transcendence vision in his transcendence vision was also open wide. He carefully looked, wanting to find something strange. But it was clear that the development of the situation had once again exceeded Xiaohua's expectations. It was just a simple meal of cultivation techniques, but the sound of continuous explosions rang out from his body. His originally intact body was now like a beehive, and many parts of his body had already turned into blood stains. Pain was naturally necessary. Moreover, this pain did not only affect his body, it also affected Xiaohua's mind. His Tao foundation and primordial spirit were faintly injured. The stingy Xiaohua had never thought that there would be a day when he would have to abandon his body for his own life. However, just now, he actually had the idea of cutting his wrist. He was prepared to abandon his body in the void at the last moment in exchange for a chance to escape. However, at this moment, the feeling of his primordial spirit told him that this was a dead end. Under this inexplicable attack, his body would completely explode, his primordial spirit and mind would no longer exist. He would be deader than dead. If he could not find the source of the explosion, if he could not find a way to solve it, he could only die. I just left the wolf's den and entered the tiger's den, Xiaohua thought fiercely in his heart. A feeling of unwillingness to submit grew in his heart. His heart that had been chased by the torrent of water earlier was now gradually becoming firm. I have always been a bit lazy. Previously, I relied on the auspicious jade talisman to obtain a lot of luck. In times of danger, I was always able to find an opportunity to escape. Now that the auspicious jade talisman is gone, my luck seems to have also disappeared. However, I still have some dependence in my heart. I feel that the heavens are still looking after me. This void is very dangerous. The light beast had clearly said that there was only a 9 out of 10 chance of survival. However, I barged in without even thinking about it. The torrent of water just now and the explosion now, which one of them is not strange? Which one of them can't easily take the life of an ordinary cultivator? Xiaohua, you have to wake up. From today onwards, don't slack off. You must rely on yourself for all the dangers. You must face them calmly. Xiaohua, who had calmed down, didn't say anything further. He first took out the innate real water to protect himself. However, although the innate real water's water curtain was formed, the explosions in his body were like beans being fried. Instead, they became even more violent. Xiaohua was so frightened that he hastily withdrew the innate real water. Strange? Xiaohua's mind spun rapidly. Why is it that the appearance of the real water is like pouring oil on fire? Although Xiaohua was at a loss, he still couldn't understand after thinking for a moment. Puff, puff, puff. The sounds of explosions became more and more intense. Currently, close to 10% of Xiaohua's body had turned into blood clots. Moreover, this kind of development seemed to be continuous. If Xiaohua didn't have any countermeasures, his entire body would become a pool of blood in less than a meal. Fellow Taoist, save me. A pitiful voice appeared in Xiaohua's mind. Needless to say, this was the voice that had fused with his body and primordial spirit. Xiaohua pondered for a moment, and simply stood in the void. This kind of aimless flight would only consume his true qi and magic power. It was basically useless. When the Jade Archive entered Xiaohua's body, the demonic phoenix Xiaohua was no longer as arrogant as before. Not only did his entire demeanor look dispirited and listless, the entire phoenix shape was damaged by more than 10%. Even the 5 colors were abnormally dim. In particular, the 1300 and 205 colored spots actually showed signs of melting. -12. Chapter 3380. Where is Dragon Vein Xiaohua? Jade Archive Xiaohua's heart moved and he hurriedly called out. I am here, fellow Taoist, please. Along with Jade Archive Xiaohua's voice, the long dragon shape appeared in front of Xiaohua's eyes. At this time, Dragon Vein Xiaohua still looked like a thin line, but this thin line was already extremely clear. It was a dragon shape. Not only were there flashing scales all over its body, even the head and horns of the dragon shape were revealed. When the dragon shape appeared, a golden light flashed, and the dragon shape turned into the human shape of Xiaohua. Obviously, Dragon Vein Xiaohua must have obtained the essence of the fire dragon's soul before, which was why he was able to make such progress. Of course, Xiaohua did not have time to look at Dragon Vein Xiaohua's progress. He only asked, Does fellow Taoist feel that something is wrong? Burning, a burning that can destroy all things. Dragon Vein Xiaohua also knew that the situation was urgent and directly answered. However, this is just the beginning. As time passes, I will not be able to resist. Very good. Jade Archive Xiaohua nodded. Does fellow Taoist know the reason? No. Fellow Taoist, please return. Jade Archive Xiaohua cupped his hands. After sending Dragon Vein Xiaohua off, he called out again. Is the bone-honing fellow Taoist here? The bone-honing Xiaohua was naturally the primordial spirit that Xiaohua integrated into the bones and focused on tempering the bones. This primordial spirit was very important, and Xiaohua also knew that according to the image secret technique from backtrack time, it seemed that the key to light escape was not only related to the 5 elements escape technique, but also the tempering of the bones. Therefore, he never called out to this primordial spirit, and only let it focus on cultivation. At this time, at the moment of life and death, Xiaohua had no choice but to call it out. Unexpectedly, Jade Archive Xiaohua called out several times, but there was no response. This bone-honing primordial spirit seemed to be even more arrogant than green-robed Xiaohua and the others. It was actually not afraid of Jade Archive Xiaohua. Jade Archive Xiaohua was slightly angry. Lightning flashed between his eyes and he was about to fly towards the bones. Fortunately, at this time, a voice louder than a bell rang out. "Fellow Taoist, why are you looking for me?" This voice sounded extremely simple, and there was even a hint of contempt in the tone. Then, a yellow light flashed, and a burly man with an indomitable spirit appeared in front of Xiaohua. "Oh!" The Jade Archive Xiaohua seemed to be seeing Xiaohua's bone-honing for the first time. He couldn't help but take a closer look. Compared to Jade Archive Xiaohua, who knew how many times larger this man was, his thick and solid hands and feet were simply like heavenly pillars that supported the heavens and earth. What was special was that there was a strong primordial aura coming from this man, and a feeling of indestructibility and eternity arose spontaneously. The man's appearance was exactly the same as Xiaohua's. Most of his body was earthy yellow in color, and only his head was golden. That brilliant golden color was extremely dazzling, and there were strange runes swimming around his forehead. "Welcome, fellow Taoist!" Jade Archive Xiaohua looked at the incomparably huge bone-tempering Xiaohua, and was extremely surprised in his heart. He didn't expect that this trace of primordial spirit would actually become like this. He cupped his hands and said, "You and I are originally one, why are you so arrogant? Now that our physical bodies are in danger of collapsing, if we don't solve it quickly, not to mention even the other fellow Taoists won't exist anymore, right?" "Ha!" The voice of bone-tempering Xiaohua resounded throughout the world. "When the nest is overturned, there are no intact eggs, I know this. But the problem is, if this physical body doesn't recover, then it doesn't recover. What does it have to do with me? You and I are no longer here, but I will still be here. Moreover, the other fellow Taoists may not necessarily not be here, right? Forget it, I won't argue with you." Jade Archive Xiaohua knew that the situation was urgent, and he didn't want to be entangled with him. He hurriedly asked, "What good plan do you have in this situation?" "Nothing," bone-tempering Xiaohua said concisely. "I don't feel anything, and I don't know how to deal with it. In the future, if there is nothing important, don't disturb my cultivation." After saying that, bone-tempering Xiaohua's body shone brightly, and slowly disappeared into his bones. "Damn it!" Jade Archive Xiaohua almost cursed, but the crisis in his physical body didn't allow him to think too much. He hurriedly shouted again, "Where is the fellow Taoist in the bloodline?" Unfortunately, Jade Archive Xiaohua shouted several times. How could any primordial spirit answer? I'm dizzy." Jade Archive Xiaohua patted his forehead. The blood-drop grotto heaven of the demon realm within his bloodline was the blood shadow technique, which had nothing to do with the primordial spirit. Where would any fellow Taoist appear? Without a choice, the Jade Archive Xiaohua returned. Pff, pff, pff. The sound of rain hitting a banana leaf could be heard. Countless pieces of flesh and blood were bursting out. This was even more dangerous than the previous torrent. Scorch! A scorch that can destroy all living things! What is this? Xiaohua's mind turned rapidly. And this Zhao's bones are not afraid. I'm stupid! Suddenly, the faint brilliance in the Dharma eye that opened suddenly attracted Xiaohua's attention. Xiaohua almost immediately understood. Isn't this the culprit that caused the explosion? This culprit has always been here, it's just that I didn't notice it. That's right, there was nothing in this void. This kind of faint, invisible brilliance, although this brilliance didn't cause any harm at first, who knew if it would cause harm to him after being in this brilliance for a long time? Wasn't this exactly the same as boiling a toad in warm water? When a toad was suddenly thrown into boiling water, the toad wouldn't be able to withstand the sudden heat, and would immediately jump out of the boiling water to escape. When boiling a toad in warm water, in the beginning, the toad wouldn't notice because of the heat. When the water became hotter and hotter, the toad would realize that it was about to be extinguished. He had seen all kinds of brilliance in this void. These brilliances wouldn't cause any harm to him, so he took it for granted that the brilliance in this void wouldn't cause any harm. But in fact, this brilliance that he was familiar with was the culprit that destroyed all things. Damn it, previously I was in pain all over, and those injuries were on the surface. Perhaps this brilliance was harmful, but I didn't notice it. Also, in order to heal my injuries, I applied a spiritual pill, which blocked the damage to the surface of the brilliance. Xiao Hua immediately understood. But this brilliance can penetrate the surface of the body, and cause harm to the depths of the body. That brilliance is even more powerful after passing through the innate primordial water. This is also the reason why innate primordial water is useless. Since Xiao Hua knew the source of the danger, he naturally wanted to escape immediately. However, his Dharma eye was filled with this brilliance, as if it was endless. Although Xiao Hua didn't dare to think too much, he still flew in one direction. But obviously, he didn't have enough time to rush out of the area covered by the brilliance. The basin used to boil Xiao Hua was really too big. No, this won't do, Xiao Hua thought as he flew. Although escaping from this area is a way to treat the root of the problem, I can't escape now. I can only find a way to treat the symptoms and stop my body from exploding. Although he wasn't afraid of that bullshit bone-tempering primordial spirit, I am. Who knows if my body can be regenerated after it explodes and my internal organs are gone? Oh? That's right, what do you mean by regenerate? However, Xiao Hua didn't have time to think about the meaning of the word regenerate at this moment. He hurriedly thought about it again. It seemed that there wasn't this kind of effect in the Tao techniques he knew. Moreover, he didn't have enough transcendence energy, so it was even more impossible to think about it. Buddha Sarira. Xiao Hua immediately thought of the Buddhist sex cultivation and hurriedly sent the Buddha Sarira out of his Naiwen palace. What scared Xiao Hua out of his wits was that the moment the Buddha Sarira flew out of his Naiwen palace, the golden surface of the Buddha Sarira immediately exploded violently. It was even weaker than the physical body. Xiao Hua hurriedly sent the Buddha Sarira back. How could he still dare to use Buddhist methods? Lightning flashing thunder rolling thunder technique? Unfortunately, that thin lightning net was unable to block the brilliance at all. Xiao Hua still dejectedly withdrew the green seal text. What should I do? Xiao Hua's newly born ambition seemed to be about to be annihilated again. The saying that man could conquer the heavens seemed to be a joke. If he didn't have any methods, his soaring aspirations would be nothing more than a cloud of nothingness. Mirror, Kunlun mirror. A light flashed in Xiao Hua's mind. He hurriedly took out the damaged Kunlun mirror and poured his remaining transcendence energy into it without hesitation. Wang. Sure enough, following the activation of transcendence energy, a faint beam of light immediately shot out of the mirror surface. This faint beam of light could only overflow half a foot from the mirror surface. However, Xiao Hua's transcendence eyes could clearly see that the faint beam of light was swept away by the Kunlun mirror. Phew! Xiao Hua let out a sigh of relief. Inside his body, the sound of beans being fried also slowly weakened. Seems like there is still some effect. Seeing this situation, Xiao Hua was half happy and half worried. He was happy that he found a way to solve his current predicament, but he was worried that he didn't have the transcendence energy to support the Kunlun mirror, especially since his meridians were blocked. Even if he took some spirit pills and spirit fruits, it was impossible to change the world's spiritual energy into true qi. Isn't this asking for my life? Xiao Hua sensed the rapidly disappearing transcendence energy. On one hand, he was like an ant on a hot pan. His brain had never been this anxious in the past 200 years. As time passed, Xiao Hua also stopped flying. Because his transcendence energy was supporting the Kunlun mirror while supporting the flight technique, it was almost exhausted. He had no choice but to make a choice. Is there any other way to get more true qi? Is there any other way to block this light? Xiao Hua thought and took out the Confucian robe and other defensive magic weapons to try, but they were all useless. At this time, a wisp of smoke in front of him attracted Xiao Hua's attention. This wisp of smoke was extremely faint. In the pitch-black void, Transcendence eyes couldn't see it at all. And if it wasn't for the light of the Kunlun mirror, the naked eye naturally couldn't see it. When Xiaohua noticed it, he found that the skin and flesh that had just been burned by the torrent had already been peeled off from his body. And when the charred flesh fell into the void, it immediately turned into smoke. It was the burning of all things that the dragon Vane had mentioned before. -12. Chapter 3381. Xiaohua was slightly disappointed when he saw this. However, just as his divine sense was about to leave, he suddenly discovered that the tiny wisp of blood that had left his flesh and blood had shrunk back into his body. It did not disappear in the light. Oh! Xiaohua was stunned. He immediately thought of something and hastily used his divine sense to examine his body. Sure enough, he saw that 20% of his body had already turned into blood, but strangely, the blood did not turn into smoke and disappear. This? Xiaohua rolled his eyes and hurriedly took out some water from the space. The moment the water touched the void, it immediately disappeared. It didn't even have time to emit smoke. Then, Xiaohua poured some more water into the bloodstains. As Xiaohua expected, the brilliance could really pass through the body. The water was basically no different from the body. Blood-dripping paradise! Xiaohua felt as if he had come back from the jaws of death. At this moment, the Kunlun mirror flashed, and Xiaohua's surroundings fell into a kind of pitch-black silence. In this silence, no one knew that it was actually a killing trap. The light was invisible to the naked eye, and the divine sense and Buddhist sense were unable to detect it. Just like that, people were killed. A drop of blood, tens of thousands of lives, a paradise free and unfettered. I offer a drop of blood to the heavens in exchange for a paradise to descend. Xiaohua put away the Kunlun mirror. Continuous bursting sounds appeared around him. Xiaohua was no longer afraid. He opened his mouth and began to chant. Blood-dripping paradise, I am the master. I use demonic blood to wash the blue sky. I am not afraid that my will not descend. Every drop is my body. Along with Xiaohua's chant, traces of demonic blood flashed. They were like tentacles and spider webs. They densely seeped out from his blood vessels. Then, they penetrated his body and rushed out from the surface of his skin. This demonic blood contained countless black flames. The black flames flickered in the pitch-black void, as if they were even darker than the void. What was special was that when the demonic blood rushed out, it immediately turned into tens of thousands of blood chi. This blood chi also flickered with a bloody color, complementing the black flames. Although this blood chi did not spread to the extreme like outside the void to form a blood mist, it was still dense and spread around Xiaohua, firmly protecting him. Roar! Xiaohua let out an angry roar from his throat. There was no sound in the void, but the nearby pitch-black color actually trembled. Xiaohua's body rapidly swelled along with the roar that sounded like a demonic person. As his body swelled, the flesh and blood within Xiaohua's body also swelled. The flesh and blood that had been burned to death by the brilliance now went crazy. Under the blood-dripping paradise, it also evolved into demonic blood. Countless demonic heads that were almost invisible to the naked eye emerged from within his body, roaring as they rushed out of his body. At this moment, Xiaohua's figure was like a demon god that was dozens of feet tall. The blood-red armor covered his head and feet. On the armor, tens of thousands of demons would occasionally roar and rush out. At other times, they would devour each other. If one looked carefully, these demons were also formed by countless smaller demons. The blood-red armor's blood-red light mixed with the black light, illuminating the surroundings. The light that was invisible to the naked eye was completely excluded from this blood-red light. Occasionally, there was a light that could pierce the blood-red light, but it was devoured by the demonic heads on the blood-red armor. These devoured demonic heads roared angrily and grew a lot stronger. Ha ha! Xiaohua looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. His face was sinister. On the top of his head, two horns flickered with a faint golden light. This golden light flickered slightly as if they were breathing. As the golden light flickered, from the gaps of the blood-red armor, strands of golden light appeared in the blood-red and black flames, flowing everywhere in the blood-red light. The demonic realm's cultivation method actually has such an effect. It's really beyond Xiaohua's expectations. Xiaohua once again relied on himself to survive in a desperate situation. He was in a really good mood. With a wave of his hand, the wishful steel staff appeared in his hand. Grow, grow, grow! With Xiaohua's proud roar, the wishful steel staff that was once again refined by the green-robed Xiaohua suddenly became more than 200 feet long. Woo! There was no sound in the void, but under the wave of the wishful steel staff, not to mention the momentum, just by looking at Xiaohua's demonic body and the giant staff of 200 feet, it could be said to be majestic. And where the wishful steel staff passed, one could see the nearby void shaking, as if it was somewhat unstable. Grow, 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 grow! Xiaohua roared a few times, and the wishful steel staff grew and grew at will. It was really beyond Xiaohua's expectations. He thought that after adding the exquisite gold, the wishful steel staff could double in size. However, the wishful steel staff stretched straight for 100 feet before reaching its limit. Similarly, the wishful steel staff grew to several feet before stopping again. Looking at this divine weapon that was taller than an ordinary mountain peak, Xiaohua spontaneously had the ambition to compete with the heavens. He really couldn't imagine what the real wishful steel staff of the 5 elements would look like. Go! Xiaohua roared, and the wishful steel staff in his hand returned to the size of several feet, dancing and flying into the distance. Although Xiaohua had an unparalleled sense of direction in the void, and under the protection of the devil body, he was no longer afraid of the colorless brilliance that could burn all things, but it still took him several hours to get out of this murderous void. Using the blood drop paradise did not require any spiritual power, nor did it require any spiritual power. What consumed Xiaohua was the bloodline power. What made Xiaohua feel uncomfortable was that when the blood helmet was born, a bloodthirsty, cruel, and violent feeling arose from the bottom of his heart. Even in Xiaohua's eyes, the dark void was completely covered with a layer of blood, which made Xiaohua extremely uncomfortable. When he used the heavenly eye connection and saw the brilliance disappear, Xiaohua immediately returned to his original state. As the blood that formed the blood helmet entered his bloodline, Xiaohua lost a lot of weight. Not only did the scars on the surface of his body disappear, but the blood clots in his body also disappeared. Of course, the earth crystal Yao milk contained in this flesh and blood was completely absorbed by Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua looked at the faint cyan blue brilliance, which looked like flickering fireflies. He knew that there were a few spatial veins in front of him. Although he didn't know which realms these spatial veins would lead to, he knew that one of these spatial veins would definitely have the void storm he wanted. Where should I go now? Xiaohua was extremely hesitant. After experiencing 2 incomparable dangers, he was no longer as reckless as before. Pinching his chin, he waited in front of these passages for the time it took to drink a cup of tea, not daring to break into any of them at will. However, he had not yet reached his original intention, so he had to make another choice. Here? Xiaohua finally took a step and came in front of a passage. In his eyes, this passage looked like the mouth of a gourd. It was narrow on the outside, but it was huge on the inside. Moreover, there was no special brilliance in this passage, and it looked very quiet. Alas, I'm afraid it's not this. Xiaohua shook his head slightly. He did not know whether the void storm was similar to the blood-red storm in the netherworld eye, but since this space was quiet, there naturally would not be any storm. Could it be this? Xiaohua turned into another passage. This passage was like a winding path, extremely narrow and deep. Inside, there were also some thumb-sized wriggling things that were invisible to the naked eye. When Xiaohua's divine sense swept over these wriggling things, his divine sense was immediately swallowed up by the wriggling things. How could Xiaohua dare to enter? Not to mention, just thinking about it made Xiaohua feel disgusted. It's too quiet, and it's too dangerous. It's really troublesome. Xiaohua looked at the surrounding brilliance that was like a spider web and sighed in his heart. This is only this Xiao, who can see through it with his divine sense. If it was someone else, they would not even know how they died in the void storm. After searching for a while, Xiaohua came in front of a passage. This passage was a little strange. The brilliance was actually golden, and there were extremely obscure fluctuations in the invisible passage from time to time. These fluctuations gave Xiaohua an indescribable feeling of familiarity. Is this the fluctuation of a transcendent treasure? Or is it the fluctuation of a formation? Xiaohua frowned slightly and thought for a while, but he did not have any clue. He only felt that it was familiar, but he did not know how it was familiar. This is... Just as Xiaohua was thinking, a clear fluctuation appeared about 10 zhang in front of him. Along with the appearance of the fluctuation, a strong wind was generated. Of course, this strong wind was only for a flash, and in an instant, it turned into nothingness. Good, Xiaohua immediately beamed with joy. Needless to say, if a fluctuation could cause a strong wind, then if there were more fluctuations, wouldn't it cause more strong winds? Isn't this a spatial storm? Thinking of this, Xiaohua's little heart trembled uncontrollably. A kind of anxiety of getting what he wanted spontaneously arose. Wasn't this what he was thinking? Let's go. Not to mention that he didn't know what kind of danger lay ahead. Even if there really was danger, Xiaohua would still make up his mind to rush into this passage because of the fear storm that might eliminate the earth crystal Yao milk in his body and meridians. However, under Xiaohua's vigilance, after flying straight into the passage for half an hour, other than encountering some fluctuations from time to time, he did not see any storms, nor did he see any other brilliance. Xiaohua was somewhat at a loss. Looking at the 3 forked spatial passages in front of him, he did not know whether he should continue forward or retreat. Because after careful calculation, he had already been in the void for more than a day, and although Xiaohua roughly knew the way back, he did not know what would happen on the way back, nor did he know how long the way back would take. If he did not leave some time for his return journey, Xiaohua really did not have confidence that he would be able to rush back to the void gate in time. Should I go or not? If I go, where should I go? This is troublesome. Xiaohua stood in front of the passage, vexed as he thought. Even if I want to go, that is the last passage. Regardless of whether I succeed or not, I have to return. Just as Xiaohua was preparing to gather troops and ride horses to war, a thought lit up his mind like lightning. -12. Chapter 3382. I heard second senior brother say that some of the passages in the space vein are stable, while some are unstable. Stable ones can safely lead to other realms, while unstable ones are caused by the true qi and laws of different realms clashing against each other. Since it's a void storm, it's only natural that it's caused by instability. How could a stable passageway have something like that? This Xiao wants to find a void storm, so naturally, I have to choose an unstable passage. As for which passage was stable, Xiaohua took out the wishful staff and hit it with all his strength to distinguish it. Cracks flashed in the space, indicating that it was unstable, and in the stable passage, the void could naturally withstand the weight of the wishful staff. Therefore, Xiaohua easily chose the leftmost passage, and the golden brilliance in this passage was more intense. Gods and Buddhas all over the sky. Xiaohua prayed in his heart. This disciple is a Buddhist disciple who wants to achieve the Bodhisattva Buddha fruit. Oh, you can take a look, this disciple's hair is now gone. For this void storm, this disciple has risked his life to come here. Don't let this disciple go empty-handed again. Xiaohua secretly muttered in his heart, and at the same time, he redoubled his caution and slowly flew into the passage. Not only that, but Xiaohua also calculated the time. If he went deeper and didn't see any void storm, he would make a prompt decision to turn back. Xiaohua's choice was not wrong. The space within the tunnel was not stable. As Xiaohua went deeper, indescribable spatial cracks began to appear, and there were even some small spatial collapses. Of course, the seemingly familiar fluctuations also became more and more concentrated, and bitingly cold gales began to wreak havoc in the space. When a gust of strong wind coincidentally hit Xiaohua's body, it cut a small scar on his body that had just recovered. Xiaohua was stunned. No, that's not right. This void storm, didn't it directly crush this Zhao's body? It is more powerful than the invisible brilliance just now. How can it crush the earth crystal Yao milk? Is it possible that it is not only the earth crystal Yao milk that was crushed, but also the body? No, that's impossible, right? If so, how can the light baby beast survive? Light beasts are not phoenixes, they can't be reborn from blood, right? Besides, even if light beasts can be reborn from blood, this Xiao can't. There's no way the light beast wouldn't know about this, right? Forget it. Xiaohua saw that the fluctuations in front of him were becoming more and more violent. A few gusts of wind blew against his face, causing him to feel pain. Xiaohua felt that his future was not good. He immediately beat the drum of retreat in his heart. However, just as this thought appeared in his mind, a chaotic fluctuation that was even more scattered than falling leaves rushed over. This fluctuation was extremely irregular, and without any warning, it instantly passed through Xiaohua's body. Swoosh! Xiaohua's body suddenly disappeared. At the same time, some of the earth crystal Yao milk also turned into pure natural power. Wave! Ripple! Xiaohua was overjoyed at the unexpected good news. He finally understood. This void storm is not a real storm, but a chaotic fluctuation. Only the chaotic power vibration could penetrate into his body and shatter the earth crystal Yao milk, which was condensed from natural powers. As long as I fly further in, the more chaotic power vibrations there are, the more the earth crystal Yao milk inside my body can be activated. As a result, Xiaohua was not in a hurry to retreat for the time being. Instead, he continued to fly forward, hoping to encounter even more chaotic fluctuations. However, when Xiaohua encountered a few more waves of chaotic fluctuations, an ominous feeling once again emerged from the bottom of his heart. Crap, what's going on? Xiaohua was greatly alarmed and hurriedly opened his transcendence vision. Not good! When Xiaohua could clearly see the front of the passage, a golden smoke appeared in the air. How could he not know that he had really encountered a void storm? Damn it, although I need a void storm, but there's no need to make such a big fuss, right? I'm afraid this void storm can drown the entire passage. How can I withstand it? Drown the passage? Then, doesn't that mean this passage is going to completely collapse? Thinking of this, Xiaohua was once again stunned. He looked around the passage with an inconceivable gaze. Sure enough, the blue-green passage had already cracked and many thin lines had appeared. Run! How could Xiaohua not know that he had fallen into another danger? Without saying anything further, he stopped moving and was about to escape. Xiaohua's thoughts were extremely fast, but how could he be faster than heaven's might? Just as he stopped, an earth-shattering tremor spread throughout the entire passage. In an instant, it overtook Xiaohua and rushed towards the fork in the road that Xiaohua had just entered. Not good! This tremor has reached the end of the passage and will definitely turn back. This passage was originally unstable, so it will definitely start to collapse from the end of the passage. Sure enough, Xiaohua's thoughts were correct. He had just turned around and flew several meters when a kind of world-destroying aura, a kind of rumbling sound of vibration, was born in his mind. In his transcendence vision, in front of Xiaohua, at the beginning of the passage, a smoke-like cloud of dust rose up and rushed towards Xiaohua. Before leaving Black Wind Ridge yesterday, why didn't I look at the almanac? Xiaohua was greatly regretful. It must have written on it that everything is not good, or is it not good? Grumbling was grumbling, but Xiaohua did not dare to stay in the collapsing space for too long. He hurriedly turned around and rushed towards the end of the passage. Woo-woo! Although there was no sound in the void, the howling wind was once again produced in Xiaohua's mind, constantly tormenting Xiaohua. Swish! Another turbulent wave, which was like a storm, passed through Xiaohua's body. A part of the earth crystal Yao milk was instantly shattered and absorbed by Xiaohua's body. Right after that, large and small turbulent waves blew one after another like a cool breeze. Although the earth crystal Yao milk in Xiaohua's body was shattered piece by piece, Xiaohua's face did not show any joy, because from these turbulent waves, Xiaohua had already sensed that a storm was coming. The change happened even faster than Xiaohua had expected. After only a few breaths of time, a violent vibration came from Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua felt as if his internal organs were being rubbed by a pair of giant hands. Right after that, the entire void passage began to vibrate as well. Xiaohua hurriedly opened his magic eyes, and immediately saw that not far away, the blue-green light was collapsing like a collapsing wall, falling down section by section. In front of this falling light, there were a few exceptionally bright rings of light, which were rushing over from afar at an even faster speed than the streams of light. Xiaohua originally wanted to fly forward, but seeing this situation, he knew that this void passage was collapsing from both ends. If he wanted to escape, he could only find an opportunity in the middle of the passage. Therefore, he hurriedly activated his power, which had already begun to recover gradually, and flew towards a place that he believed to be safe. Although Xiaohua was flying much faster than before, how could he be faster than these waves of energy? Only after flying for tens of jiangs, from Xiaohua's left hand, tens of thousands of disordered waves of energy rushed over like stormy waves. Those waves of energy, which seemed to be able to drown everything, seemed to not be inferior to the torrents Xiaohua had seen at the beginning. The void is dangerous! Xiaohua's heart trembled incessantly, but his mind was still clear. The heaven's eye of the Dharma eye was activated to the extreme, and the perception of the void was also activated to the extreme, in order to find a trace of survival in this crisis. Woo! Like a tsunami storm in the closed sea, the void storm instantly slammed Xiaohua into the collapsed passage. Those waves of energy were like waves of the sea that battered Xiaohua's body. Swish, swish, swish. Xiaohua's Taoist robe turned into powder and disappeared. In the pitch-black void, an indescribable brilliance could still be seen on the surface of Xiaohua's body. When the waves of energy came into contact with Xiaohua's body, many of them were actually blocked, and only 40% of them penetrated into his body. Like washing away the mud on Xiaohua's body, it instantly transformed the earth crystal Yao milk in Xiaohua's body, meridians, and upper and lower dantian into pure earth attribute heaven and earth's spiritual qi. Great! Xiaohua felt his body go limp, as well as the pressure that was heavier than a mountain. He didn't have the slightest bit of strength to resist, and even his body was collapsing slightly. He smiled bitterly, and could only praise his own misfortune. That's right, the problem of the earth crystal Yao milk was about to be solved, but the scale of this void storm was far beyond what he could bear. Perhaps, when the earth crystal Yao milk completely transformed into heaven and earth's spiritual qi, his body would also collapse, and his flesh would begin to melt away, right? Although Xiaohua had just used the blood-drop paradise to resist the nameless brilliance, this void storm was different from before. This kind of monstrous devastation was far from what the previous silence could compare to. Xiaohua didn't feel that his devil realm cultivation method could resist anything. Swoosh! Another wave-like fluctuation rushed into his body. This fluctuation came too strangely, because this fluctuation was comparable to a flood peak between the two other fluctuations, and was close to being in between movement and stillness. If Xiaohua wasn't very sensitive and familiar with fluctuations, he wouldn't have been able to sense it. However, when this fluctuation entered his body, the earth crystal Yao milk didn't move at all. However, when this fluctuation rushed into Xiaohua's lower dantian, Xiaohua's huge gold core, which was like an invisible nebula, suddenly shook. The edges of the nebula began to flicker with strands of star-like luster. After that huge fluctuation rushed into the gold core, it didn't move at all, as if it was absorbed by the nebula gold core. When the fluctuation disappeared, the entire gold core shook violently. In the center of the countless tiny gold cores that couldn't be seen by the naked eye, a fluctuation similar to the previous fluctuation suddenly appeared. This fluctuation condensed into a point, flashing with intense brilliance. There were many tiny gold cores in the nebula gold core. In the beginning, the fluctuation was slightly chaotic, but in a few breaths, all the fluctuations became uniform. Moreover, the moment the brilliance in the center of these gold cores became uniform, it immediately turned into an oval-shaped halo that bloomed from the center of the gold core, as brilliant as fireworks. -12. Chapter 3383. Many rings of light rippled rapidly within the nebula gold core. The entire nebula gold core began to collapse just like the void passage Xiaohua was in. This collapse also produced ripples, unexpectedly forming a resonance with the collapse of the void passage. Waves of ripples were also produced from Xiaohua's body, becoming one with the void passage. Admittedly, it was this tiny body that was drifting around like a pellet in the collapsing tunnel, but it was also these two kinds of fluctuations that combined into one that protected Xiaohua's body and allowed him to escape the calamity of losing his life. At the same time the ripples were produced from Xiaohua's body, the gold core began to collapse, and then collapsed at an extremely fast speed. The direction of the collapse was precisely the trace of black and white light that suddenly appeared in the center of the nebula gold core. Once again, an obscure fluctuation appeared at the spot of light. This fluctuation was extremely slow, but it was also extremely vast and powerful. It was filled with traces of the way of the heavens. The moment it appeared, it was like a sudden clap of thunder in a thunderstorm. It instantly attracted all the fluctuations within the collapsed gold core into it. Pregnant with a baby? Xiaohua was dumbfounded. He had read a lot of ancient books, and also comprehended a lot of cultivation methods and experiences. He had even thought about the abnormalities of his pregnancy many times. However, he had never thought that he would be pregnant in the void. However, if he thought about it carefully, Xiaohua once again felt the vastness of the heavenly Tao in this strange situation. His gold core was currently formless. On the hidden immortal continent, it was basically impossible for him to conceive a baby. In this void, the formless gold core revealed the shape of a nebula. If he didn't conceive a baby in the void, where could he conceive a baby? But suddenly, Xiaohua thought of a fatal flaw. There is no heaven and earth spiritual energy in the void. Why should I conceive a baby? Even if I know the dragon transformation art, even if I know the immortal body bestowment technique, what's the use? All of these are useless in the void. Right, there is no heaven and earth spiritual energy in the void, but this Xiao has a huge amount of earth crystal Yao milk in his body. This is the purest earth-type spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Xiaohua was like a drowning man who had caught a tree branch. He suddenly realized. But I don't know if this earth crystal Yao milk can support me to successfully conceive a baby. In the short period of time that Xiaohua was thinking, a powerful pressure came from his body and spread out in all directions. His divine sense also came out along with the pressure. Xiaohua felt that this pressure was incomparably powerful, and his divine sense was also extremely vast. However, in this void passage, although the two of them carried the power of the heavenly way, they seemed so insignificant. After just a few dozen feet, they were suppressed by the chaotic fluctuations and the power of space, forcibly compressed around Xiaohua. Of course, this kind of suppression didn't harm Xiaohua at all. On the contrary, it was even more beneficial. On one hand, the divine sense and pressure were the phenomena of a pregnant baby, and they carried the power of the heavenly way. The range that they should have been able to cover was suppressed by the power of the heavenly way. They would be able to use the power of the heavenly way to grow and reach their own range. While competing with the power of the void passage, the pressure and divine sense would inevitably grow beyond Xiaohua's imagination. This kind of opportunity was not something that all cultivators could think of or encounter. On the other hand, the pressure and divine sense were compressed around Xiaohua, forming an extremely powerful defensive buffer. The destructive power of the collapse of the void passage was also not something that Xiaohua could imagine. Something even more powerful than the previous torrent could still kill Xiaohua, and under the protection of this defensive buffer, Xiaohua was able to safely escape. Xiaohua naturally didn't think of this for the time being. As soon as the pressure appeared, he sensed it and knew that he could conceive a baby. Almost without thinking, He waved his hand with great difficulty and put the nascent pregnancy pill he obtained from the Seven Suns Temple's golden steel into his mouth. As soon as the nascent pregnancy pill entered his mouth, it immediately turned into spiritual energy and rushed into Xiao Hua's lower dantian with a faint fluctuation. At this moment, in Xiao Hua's lower dantian, the collapsed golden nebula core had already stopped when it was half a foot in size. The originally tens of thousands of tiny golden cores had now all disappeared, and even the small golden cores formed from the male and female inner cores had turned into speckle-like fluctuations. As for the fluctuations within the golden nebula core that contained the traces of the heavenly way, it was still flickering methodically. It slowly swept through these fluctuations, passed through the golden nebula core, and rushed out of Xiao Hua's body. A faint fluctuation from the nascent pregnancy pill fell into the lower dantian, and was attracted by the newly born fluctuations of the golden nebula core, sinking into the half-foot golden core. Wang. As soon as the fluctuation entered the golden core, the entire golden core immediately shook. The black and white speckles of light began to expand, and the golden nebula core began to collapse and shrink again. Following the change of the golden nebula core, an even stronger suction force was born from the invisible golden core. Not only was the medicinal power of the nascent pregnancy pill sucked into the golden core, even the residual true qi in the meridians was sucked into the golden core. What made Xiao Hua feel gratified was that this suction force was so strong that although it couldn't suck away the earth crystal Yao milk in the meridians, at the same time that the golden nebula core in Xiao Hua's lower dantian changed, following that invisible and soundless fluctuation, it rushed into Xiao Hua's body like a tidal wave. The earth crystal Yao milk that was being washed over and over again turned into waves of heaven and earth spirit qi. These heaven and earth spirit qi were all sucked into the golden nebula core to nourish the nascent soul. However, it only moved for a moment before the fluctuation was assimilated by the other fluctuations in the golden core and disappeared. Although the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and the vital energy of heaven and earth were continuously sent into the golden core, the entire nebula golden core stopped moving. Xiao Hua, who had been nervously observing, finally understood. He threw the nascent pregnancy pill in his hand into his mouth one after another, maintaining the spirit qi and fluctuations of the golden core. Right now, the void was abnormally chaotic. Violent fluctuations and strange splendor rose and fell one after another. The collapse not only destroyed the void passage Xiao Hua was in, but it also spread out in all directions. It seemed as if the entire network of space was affected by it. As for Xiao Hua, he was like a drop of water in the vast ocean, drifting with the waves. He didn't know where his future was. There was a saying in Buddhism, a flower, a world, a drop, a space. Xiao Hua was like that at this moment. No matter how dangerous the outside world was, he only silently guarded his heart. With a single thought, he became a nascent soul, paying no attention to the madness of the outside world. He didn't know how long it took. Xiao Hua had taken a total of 1440 nascent pregnancy pills. Only then did he see the black and white splendor collide with the outline of the golden nebula core. At this moment, the golden nebula core was about half a qi. The instant the two collided, it was as if the heavenly thunder had attracted the fire of the earth. It emitted lightning like a thunderbolt. Moreover, the golden nebula core contained the inner cores of the male and female lightning beasts. Lightning instantly filled the entire golden nebula core. At the same time, the black and white splendor rushed into the golden nebula core, and the golden nebula core was dyed black and white. Ka ka ka! A crisp cracking sound emerged in Xiao Hua's heart. The black and white splendor, together with the golden nebula core, cracked. At the same time, an even stronger fluctuation than before rushed into Xiao Hua's body. The remaining earth crystal Yao milk was completely shattered. It rushed through his meridians and rushed into his lower dantian, rushing into the shattered golden core. The strange thing was, after this huge amount of earth attribute heaven and earth spiritual qi rushed into the golden core, it actually turned into clusters of tiny fluctuations. It was like 100 birds returning to their nests, clustered in the center of the golden core. As the fluctuations increased, the fluctuations in the center of the black and white splendor suddenly stopped. Xiaohua's body suddenly became still. Xiaohua felt that his thoughts were also stagnated. When Xiaohua's thoughts were able to move again, a half-qi-long baby shadow was born in the black and white splendor. Void nascent soul! Xiaohua's heart was in ecstasy. He immediately understood that he had already completed the crucial step of conceiving a nascent soul. His nascent soul had already been created from nothing. Now, as long as he used the heaven and earth spiritual qi to enrich this shadow, he would be able to conceive a nascent soul. The process of filling the shadow was naturally the process of forming a nascent soul. This was easy in the Dawn Rain continent, or even in the hidden Immortal continent. Where the pressure was, and the range of the divine sense, there would certainly be countless heaven and earth spiritual qi condensed into crystal beads and rushed into Xiaohua's body. With Xiaohua's current cultivation, there would even be a large amount of spiritual qi coming from all directions. However, the current Xiaohua was in the void. Where would the heaven and earth spiritual qi come from? The earth crystal Yao milk in his body had already been completely exhausted, and there was not much nascent soul pills left. He could no longer use them. The only thing Xiaohua could rely on was the nearly endless supply of spiritual grasses in his space. Roar! An indescribable cry sounded. Xiaohua suddenly raised his head. He saw that above his head, a several zhang tall spiritual image doppelganger had appeared. It had the same appearance as the shadow in his lower dantian. My goodness, this is the void. With so much pressure, the spiritual image doppelganger is still several zhang tall. If it was in the hidden Immortal continent, how tall would it be? Xiaohua was somewhat aghast. He hastily took out some spiritual grasses from his space and put them into his mouth. Unfortunately, Xiaohua's little calculation was wrong again. These spiritual grasses might have been very old, and the heaven and earth spiritual qi they contained was not much. However, if he used this method to supply the nascent soul, he would be unable to make ends meet. The heaven and earth spiritual qi contained in several stalks of spiritual grasses filled Xiaohua's meridians to the point of choking. Even if he used the dragon transformation art, it would not be able to produce the slightest change in Xiaohua's nascent soul. Not good! Seeing that this path was blocked, Xiaohua's complexion changed greatly. The only thing I can do now is to escape from this void. No matter what world this is, as long as there is heaven and earth spiritual qi, this Xiao can successfully conceive a nascent soul. However, Xiaohua's thoughts were very rich. This void was also very thin. Not to mention that the void was currently collapsing and the storm was raging. Even if it was a calm void, how could he come and go as he pleased? What should I do? Xiaohua's heart was burning with anxiety, but he was also at a loss as to what to do. Xiaohua was distracted, and the spiritual grasses in his mouth became slack. His empty meridians no longer had a trace of true qi absorbed into his nascent soul. Damn it! Xiaohua turned pale with fright. He understood in his heart that at this moment, his nascent soul needed an endless supply of spiritual qi. With this mistake of his, wouldn't the nascent soul that had already been condensed collapse? -12. Chapter 3384. Contrary to Xiaohua's expectations, without the supply of true energy, the fake nascent soul didn't distort or collapse as Xiaohua had expected. It didn't even change in the slightest. Instead, at the heart of the fake nascent soul, where the black and white brilliance fluctuated, that slow heartbeat-like fluctuation paused for a moment, then changed its rhythm and firmly vibrated. Following this vibration, the fluctuation rushed out of the fake nascent soul and firmly spread in all directions. This is... Xiaohua was startled. He immediately sent in more spiritual herbs, but at this time, he was extremely sensitive to the changes in his surroundings. The numerous fluctuations that were originally blocked by the spirit statue Dharma body were now attracted by the fluctuations produced by his fake nascent soul. As the rhythm changed, they rushed into his body. The pressure and divine sense could not be stopped, and the body could not stop them either. Strand after strand, they all entered the fake nascent soul. Buzz! The influx of fluctuations caused the fake nascent soul to vibrate again. Dots of fluorescent light were produced in the fake nascent soul, as if a spirit tide was directly surging out of the fake nascent soul. Xiaohua did not have any experience in pregnancy, but he had experience in producing Buddha relics. Seeing this, he immediately knew that the fluctuations were filling the nascent soul. Since his mind was calm, Xiaohua immediately thought of the details just now and cursed inwardly. Damn it, didn't the fake nascent soul pill just enter the dantian? Moreover, the extremely large amount of spiritual energy and true energy that entered the dantian also turned into small fluctuations. In this void, I'm afraid the fluctuations are the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, right? It's just that although the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was vast, the amount of fluctuations it turned into was extremely small, so I didn't notice it. My nascent soul is originally different from ordinary nascent souls, so it should be normal to use the fluctuations in the void to construct it. Thinking of this, Xiaohua opened his Dharma eyes with difficulty. There was also the power of heaven and earth in the void. Xiaohua's surroundings were confined for several hundred feet. However, the confinement of Xiaohua's nascent soul realm seemed insignificant in the void, and even more insignificant in the void storm and the collapse of the passage. However, even so, Xiaohua's transcendence eyes could see that within the chaotic darkness, a multicolored brilliance similar to the spirit tide was also emerging from the void. It flickered with a rhythm as it surged into Xiaohua's body. What was special was that the spiritual idol was similarly absorbing a large amount of brilliance. This brilliance was once again pouring into Xiaohua's body from the top of his head. After an unknown period of time, the void storm gradually stopped, and the collapse of the spatial tunnel also stopped. The void storm was originally a raging storm, but under the influence of Xiaohua's pregnant baby, the destructive power of the storm increased by many times. Within the spatial meridians, it was unknown how many spatial passageways were destroyed by the storm. Unfortunately, Xiaohua was unaware of all this. Within Xiaohua's lower dantian, a 1-foot-long nascent soul gradually solidified. And at this time, Xiaohua's physical body underwent another mutation. Xiaohua activated the dragon transformation art, and his entire meridians began to tremble uncontrollably. Following the trembling of his meridians, his nascent soul also began to tremble. Tiny cracks began to appear in his nascent soul, and their positions coincided with his meridians. Vein sculpting? Xiaohua was dumbfounded, and he almost blurted out in shock. There are meridians in the nascent soul's body? That's right. In Xiaohua's understanding, the nascent soul of the Tao sect was the condensation of heaven and earth's spiritual energy. It could directly control spiritual energy, so why would it need meridians? Furthermore, in the records of the nascent soul cultivation method that he obtained, there was never any mention of reconstructing meridians. Instantly, Xiaohua thought of the scene he saw when he first dual cultivated with Fairy Hong Xia. That was all the meridians in the body. At the same time, there were many places where the dragon transformation art had not been cultivated. Since the nascent soul wants to reconstruct its meridians, then this Xiao will reconstruct all of these meridians. Seeing this, how could Xiaohua not know that this was an excellent opportunity for him? He immediately controlled his mind and used all his strength to control the dragon transformation art. Along with the trembling, the meridians in his memory were revealed bit by bit. At the same time, they were being reconstructed in the nascent soul's body. In fact, it was not that ordinary cultivators did not reconstruct their meridians. However, they only had 2 meridians, one yin and one yang. One connected to the heavens, and the other connected to the earth. Even if it was reconstructed, it would be a matter of an instant. Perhaps there were records in the earliest nascent soul cultivation method, but with the passage of time, this had already become common knowledge. Just like how there were only 12 layers of qi refining cultivation methods, no one would investigate further, and no one would reconstruct other meridians. Of course, even if there were people who wanted to reconstruct their meridians, the vast majority of them would end up with their nascent soul destroyed. Who would think of something else at the crucial moment of forming their nascent soul? In particular, the human body's meridians were originally balanced. One more or less meridians would cause the nascent soul to collapse. For someone like Xiaohua who knew about the meridians of the entire body, it could be said that there was no precedent in the past or in the future. Who would walk this dangerous path that was close to no return? Reconstructing meridians was even more dangerous than forming a nascent soul. The time required was much longer, and the amount of heaven and earth's spiritual energy needed was much greater. The fluctuations within Xiaohua's nascent soul rushed straight into the depths of the void, attracting even more fluctuations. In the depths of the spatial meridians, the aftermath of the tunnel's collapse had just calmed down. The pitch-black void slightly distorted. At this moment, the fluctuations swept past and a faint whirlpool suddenly appeared in the void. The fluctuations rushed into the whirlpool and were immediately swallowed by the whirlpool. The whirlpool became even bigger and flashed with a gray brilliance. When the gray brilliance covered the entire whirlpool, the whirlpool was already 1 foot in size. At the bottom of the gray brilliance, a pitch-black dot condensed. The pitch-black dot seemed to have shattered and a thumb-sized tentacle stretched out from the inside. Then, like a silkworm breaking out of its cocoon, another tentacle stretched out from the other side of the shattered void. Ka-ka, even though there was no sound, the void looked very thin and brittle. In an instant cracks appeared from the whirlpool. Then, a strange head stretched out from the 2 tentacles and curiously twisted a few times. Then, it opened its sawtooth-like mouth and began to chew on the left side of the whirlpool. The whirlpool was unexpectedly swallowed by this strange insect. When the void next to the head was large enough, a body that was several feet long squeezed out from the void. Crunch, crunch! When this strange insect entered the void, it immediately let out a series of rumbling sounds. Its 2 gray wings suddenly spread out, and it flew towards the direction of the fluctuations. Along the way, all kinds of fluctuations were swallowed by this strange insect, causing this strange insect to grow even larger. After the strange insect flew away, the cracks in the void quickly healed. When it returned to its original state, another tentacle stretched out from the last crack. Unfortunately, this tentacle stretched out several times, but was unable to reach out from the crack. In the end, it was forcefully pushed back into the crack and disappeared. Xiaohua naturally didn't know that the fluctuations of his yuanying had attracted an uninvited guest. At this moment, he had already successfully reconstructed the meridians of his yuanying. The entire dragon transformation art had slowly stopped. This was also a phenomenon that Xiaohua had never experienced since he started cultivating the dragon transformation art. A sense of exhaustion emerged not only from Xiaohua's meridians, but also from his nascent soul and physical body. Everyone else only reconstructed 2 meridians, but Xiaohua had reconstructed the meridians of an entire human body. The amount of spiritual sense and concentration he expended was far greater than that of an ordinary cultivator. If it weren't for the fact that Xiaohua had cultivated the sun-shrouding art, the dragon transformation art, and the support of his 10 primordial spirits, he definitely wouldn't have succeeded in something that even Grand Ascension stage cultivators wouldn't dare to attempt. AI, other people's nascent souls probably only have 2 meridians. At this moment, Xiaohua had already comprehended something. If my nascent soul has so many meridians, then wouldn't my cultivation speed be 100 times faster than others? Feeling his nascent soul and meridians stop resonating, Xiaohua felt like he was about to collapse. However, under the might of the heavens, he still sat cross-legged in the void. The nascent soul and meridians stopped resonating for only a moment, then the surface of the nascent soul trembled slightly. This trembling was very subtle, and Xiaohua almost didn't want to pay attention to it. However, just as the trembling was about to disappear, Xiaohua suddenly woke up. If it weren't for the fact that he was in the void and was suppressed by the might of the heavens, Xiaohua almost jumped up and down. Damn it, this is a chance for a nascent soul cultivator to reconstruct his physical body. How could I waste it? However, just as Xiaohua was about to control the vibration of his nascent soul to reconstruct his physical body, he hesitated again and thought, do I have to reconstruct my body to be as handsome as second senior brother? Damn it, that guy is already a handsome freak. Even if I reconstruct my body, I can't surpass him. Since that's the case, why should I compete with him? Do I have to reconstruct my body to look like Zhang Xiaohua? But Xiaohua's small nose and small eyes, aren't they too ugly? Since I have a devil statue to look like Xiaohua, I don't have to look like him anymore, right? After thinking about it, in the end, Xiaohua couldn't bear to part with his current stinky skin and decided to reconstruct his appearance to look like a 24 or 25-year-old. After all, an 18-year-old face was too delicate, giving people a kind of immature feeling. Sigh, so pitiful! Xiaohua touched his smooth cheeks, then touched his bald head that was even brighter than his cheeks, and said with a bitter smile, "Being handsome is also troublesome. Even if I'm reconstructing my physical body while pregnant, I still have to face a huge problem." Just as Xiaohua was indulging in his narcissism, all the phenomena of the pregnant nascent soul and heaven's might came to an end. The collapse of the passage and the storm in the void also came to an end. However, the heaven's might gradually dissipated, and the pressure that Xiaohua released slowly retracted. At the same time, the countless fluctuations that were attracted by the fluctuations of Xiaohua's nascent soul crazily poured into Xiaohua's body like a spirit tide. That huge spirit statue also gradually entered Xiaohua's body along with these fluctuations, gradually fusing with the solemn nascent soul. When the spirit statue fused with the nascent soul crawled out from the top of Xiaohua's head. Although there were endless storms and countless fluctuations in the void, under the heaven's might, the nascent soul's location was also extremely stable. The nascent soul pointed one hand to the sky and the other to the ground, and sang, "Heaven and earth, 9 directions, soul and spirit, 1 lotus throne, 1 soul burning the soul, 1 heart of the 5 Qis cleansing the mundane, 1 Taoist master with 7 refinements." -12. Chapter 3385. When the nascent soul finished singing, it opened its mouth and the surrounding brilliance turned into a waterfall and fell into the nascent soul's body. The nascent soul seemed to be extremely satisfied and laughed. "From now on, I will be called Taoist Master Xiao." Before its voice fell, the nascent soul's figure shrank and disappeared into Xiaohua's bald head. The brilliance of the void disappeared, and the fluctuations also subsided. Everything indicated that Xiaohua's trip to the void had been successful. Xiaohua's heart was even more calm. The nascent soul formed a seal and closed its eyes to rest. It seemed that the meridian sculpting and body sculpting just now had consumed a lot of its energy. Xiaohua slightly closed his eyes. A very strange, yet familiar feeling arose in his heart. The nascent soul could be considered as a doppelganger of Xiaohua, but Xiaohua didn't split his own primordial spirit to the nascent soul. However, this nascent soul gave Xiaohua a kind of feeling. This feeling was similar to his own primordial spirits. Of course, Xiaohua was used to seeing the green-robed Xiaohua and the soul cultivator Xiaohua. "Oh, not good!" Suddenly, Xiaohua opened his eyes, and the nascent soul in his lower dantian also opened its starry eyes. All 4 eyes flashed with panic. "This Xiao is indeed a pregnant nascent soul, and has crossed an unimaginable abyss. Now I can be considered a grandmaster. However, this is a spatial vein, and this Xiao only has 3 days. With such a large-scale storm in the void, how can it possibly stop in 3 days? This Xiao's nascent soul is not just 3 days. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. Hurry up and find." Unfortunately, before Xiaohua could raise his eyes to look around and use his sense of space to find the direction, an indescribable feeling of horror suddenly arose. In particular, the nascent soul that had just been born trembled and curled up into a ball, seeming to be extremely terrified. Xiaohua raised his head and narrowed his eyes. The pupils in his eyes had already shrunk into a ball. He looked straight at a place in the void. There was nothing special in that place. However, in just half a cup of tea's time, in Xiaohua's vision, a gray ball appeared from the dark void. It was like a meteor in the night sky, flying towards Xiaohua at an extremely fast speed. "See, there are still demonic beasts in the void?" Xiaohua was shocked, but he immediately felt relieved. Since the light beast could come to the void, other monsters in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm could certainly come. Since there were monsters in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, people in the hidden Immortal continent, and Buddhas in the Pure Land world, then what was so strange about demonic beasts in the void? Shocked, Xiaohua hurriedly opened his eyes. Xiaohua's brows furrowed. His brows furrowed his brows. His brows furrowed. Xiaohua frowned. Xiaohua's Zhao's eyes. Xiaohua's eyebrows were tightly wrinkled. Far away in the distance, there were some lights floating around. These lights were multicolored. They seemed to be the fluctuations left behind by Xiaohua when she was pregnant. Not far from these lights, there was a gray ball of light that was 2 feet in size flying towards the lights. This gray ball of light was the image of a strange insect. Half of this strange insect was the head of this strange insect. On the head, there were 2 long tentacles. The tentacles were serrated and looked very sharp. Behind the tentacles were 2 fist-sized pitch-black spots. These pitch-black spots seemed to be made up of thousands of smaller pitch-black spots. If there was no accident, they should be the eyes of the strange insect. Looking at the other half of the strange insect, there was a slight bulge. Layers of gray patches were stacked together. It should be the body of the strange insect. The gray patches converged at the tail of the strange insect, condensing into a sharp spike several inches long. The spike emitted a dark gray color. Looking at the 2 sides of the strange insect's body, there was a pair of feather wings several feet in size. When they flapped, they emitted a black light. Under the wings, there were 2 hind legs several feet long, like a pair of halberds. Isn't this a locust? Xiaohua instantly connected this strange insect with the small insect that was commonly seen in the countryside. Oh, it's still a little different. Naturally, Xiaohua's transcendence vision couldn't see things that could be seen with the naked eye. Even if a person stood in front of Xiaohua, he might not be able to see them with his transcendence vision. But this strange insect that looked like a locust could actually be seen by Xiaohua's transcendence vision. This strange insect was naturally not a small matter. Moreover, when the strange insect flew to several spots of light, it opened its mouth, which took up almost half of its head, and chewed up the light with a few bites. Then, it spread its wings and flew elsewhere. The strange insect flew very fast, and the speed at which it ate was even faster. Before long, it had already closed the distance between it and Xiaohua. Not good! This strange insect seems to be coming for me. Looking at the strange insect swallowing the light all the way, whether it was to the left or the right, but the direction it was flying in was his direction. Even the light that was slightly further away from its flight path was not eaten by the strange insect. Xiaohua immediately understood that this was the result of the fluctuations he used to form his nascent soul. Run! This was already the 3rd time Xiaohua tried to escape after falling into the void. Now that Xiaohua had just formed his nascent soul, the true essence in his meridians was abundant. With a thought, his nascent soul was filled with abnormally abundant magic power. Using the lightning evasion technique, he flew towards a place with a loud bang. When Xiaohua was in the late Oris core stage, he had already broken through to the Imperial lightning evasion technique. Now that he had formed his nascent soul, his lightning evasion technique had also improved. When he just started, he was still in the early stage of the Imperial lightning evasion technique, but with the infusion of magic power, his speed actually became faster and faster, gradually approaching the late stage. Although there was no sound in the void, the lightning flashing around Xiaohua's body was very dazzling in this pitch-black void. Although Xiaohua was fleeing with all his might, his transcendence eye was still vigilantly staring at the strange insect's location. Seeing that he had used the lightning evasion technique to escape, the strange insect did not detect him at all and was still leisurely eating the light. Xiaohua's heart first relaxed. As long as this strange insect that caused him to tremble didn't chase after him, everything would be fine. Unfortunately, just as Xiaohua was feeling relieved, the strange insect suddenly seemed to wake up. It abruptly raised its head, and its pitch-black eyes were like colored glass reflecting a black brilliance, flashing with a layer of black light. Soon after, the strange insect's 2 hind legs stomped, and a strange gray brilliance flashed, and the strange insect actually disappeared without a trace. Xiao Hua was stunned, and his transcendent's eye hurriedly looked around. His heart once again gave birth to a bad feeling. Sure enough, after a few breaths of time, the strange insect's body appeared again, and this time, it was already very far away from the place where it had just disappeared. What kind of divine ability is this? Is it teleportation? Xiao Hua turned pale with fright once again. A few breaths of time, Even if he used the lightning evasion technique, it was impossible to fly so far away. If this strange insect used a teleportation-like divine ability to chase after him, it probably wouldn't take long to catch up, right? Having already realized that his lightning evasion technique had attracted the strange insect's attention, Xiao Hua hurriedly withdrew his lightning evasion technique and switched to the commonly used wind evasion technique. However, there was no wind in this void, and Xiao Hua could only rely on his transcendence energy to activate it. The normally handy wind evasion technique was inferior to an ordinary flight technique. When Xiao Hua switched to the cloud riding technique commonly used by Confucian cultivators, the strange insect really stopped using the divine ability that made Xiao Hua tremble with fear, and switched to a pair of feather wings that were several feet long. But even so, the strange insect's flying speed still seemed to be faster than Xiao Hua's by a third, and the distance between him and the insect slowly shrunk. Xiao Hua already didn't have the time to think about where the strange insect came from, and also didn't have the time to think about why the strange insect was chasing after him. His transcendence vision was only looking forward. Although his transcendence vision was abnormally tired, he didn't dare to slack off in the slightest, because he felt that this strange insect was more formidable than the water flow, the brilliance of light, and even the void storm. If he was even the slightest bit careless, he might die in its mouth. At this moment, Xiao Hua had already lost his perception of the space gate from before. Perhaps it was because the distance was too far, or perhaps the space gate had already closed, but Xiao Hua's only thought was to quickly avoid the strange insect and not face it head-on. Xiao Hua's thoughts were very simple, and his wish was also very pitiful. But it was this tiny wish that the heavens disdained to fulfill for him. The strange insect had been chasing after Xiao Hua all along, and was gradually shortening the distance between them. Fortunately, when the strange insect was not too far away from Xiao Hua, in Xiao Hua's transcendence vision, he finally saw the end of the collapsed space passage, and in front of him was the intermittent brilliance of the void passage. Obviously, these void passages were also affected by the storm just now, but they had not completely collapsed. Good, Xiao Hua was almost ecstatic from his heart. Previously, the boundless void was simply unable to avoid the strange insect, but now that there was a space passage, even if it was incomplete, Xiao Hua would still be able to deal with the strange insect, right? Xiao Hua cheerfully raised his head and let out a long whistle. As a newly emerged nascent soul grandmaster, he was actually forced to flee in a sorry state by a 2-foot-long strange insect. Xiao Hua's heart was really sullen. Unfortunately, the void was still the void. Xiao Hua's whistle not only couldn't be heard by himself, but also attracted the strange insect's attention. The strange insect that had been spreading its wings all this time kicked its 2 hind legs and disappeared. Damn it! Xiao Hua shrunk his neck. How could he dare to be arrogant again? He looked left and right, then hurriedly turned around and flew towards a fork in the passage. Xiao Hua had just flown close to the fork when the strange insect appeared at the place where Xiao Hua was previously. Its mouth was full of fangs, flashing with a gray brutality. Not only did the strange insect appear, it also flew forward for a distance. Obviously, it thought that Xiao Hua was the same as before and didn't change direction. Seeing this, Xiao Hua hurriedly chose a passage and rushed in. At the same time, he waved his hand and the sword gourd appeared in his hand. Xiao Hua's figure entered the passage, then he immediately hid at the entrance of the passage and quietly stood there. The strange insect flapped its wings and calmly chased after Xiao Hua. Without hesitation, it rushed into the passage that Xiao Hua chose. As soon as the strange insect rushed in, it saw a pale white brilliance appear in the pitch-black void. This brilliance had a blurry appearance. Then, from this brilliance, a red and a green brilliance rushed out. The brilliance made a turn in the void and fell between the strange insect's neck. -12. Chapter 3386. Damn it, go to hell! Xiao Hua activated the sword gourd and sneered in his heart. He still knew the power of the execution spirit Yuan light. However, everything that followed made him unable to laugh. Because before the red and green execution spirit Yuan light flew out, the strange insect did not stand still under the sword gourd. Instead, its two fist-sized black eyes flashed with a black light. The sword gourd's effect of nailing the mind did not take effect. Xiao Hua's heart thumped. He looked at the strange insect again. Seeing the execution spirit Yuan light falling, it actually raised its head, opened its mouth, and bit towards the two execution spirit Yuan light. Damn it, it wants to eat this! Xiao Hua was shocked. He pointed his finger, and the green and red execution spirit Yuan light fell into the mouth of the strange insect. The moment it fell, it slightly turned and cut on the strange insect's body. Ka! Sparks appeared on the strange insect's body, and the two execution spirit Yuan light flew back. The strange insect seemed to be angered by the execution spirit Yuan light. It spread its wings, bared its fangs, and pounced on Xiao Hua. The void was pitch black, and the strange insect was also pitch black. Even the gray on the wings could not be seen clearly in this void. If Xiao Hua was not struggling to open his eyes at this time, how could he see the strange insect's attack? Moreover, the strange insect's wings did not seem to be abnormal. Not only was there no sound of wind, but there were also no ordinary fluctuations. It was as if the strange insect was one with the void. Seeing that the strange insect was more flexible than the fish in the water and approached in a few breaths, Xiao Hua was shocked again. He did not have time to withdraw the sword gourd, and his other hand was about to take out the wishful rod. But just as Xiao Hua's mind thought of the wishful rod, he saw a faint flash of darkness on his left foot, and then a desolate feeling came from his left ankle. Xiao Hua's heart sank, and he thought, this is not good. Because his eyes had been staring at the strange insect, it was to prevent the strange insect's sneak attack. But at this time, in his eyes, he only saw the strange insect pouncing and did not see any other attacks. In other words, the strange insect actually had a sneak attack that could avoid his eyes. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua did not have time to look for the wishful wand. He casually took out a worn-out magic tool from the space and threw it into the void based on his feeling. His body hurriedly curled up. Swoosh! Xiao Hua watched as the blue-green magic treasure was shattered by an invisible thing in the air. Then, that invisible thing swept past Xiao Hua's feet. An extremely cold chill came from Xiao Hua's feet and went straight to the bottom of his heart. Hind leg! Xiao Huafa couldn't see it clearly, but he could see it with his naked eye. It was one of the two hind legs that the strange insect had used to hide in the void. Damn it, this strange insect is too powerful! Xiao Hua's back was covered in a layer of cold sweat. Not only can the two hind legs fly, they can also be used as weapons. What's more, the hind legs can actually hide from the Dharma eye. Ouch! Just as Xiao Hua dodged the sneak attack from the strange insect's hind legs, the two tentacles in front of the strange insect's head were even more nimble than two soft whips, and swept towards Xiao Hua. The fist-sized eyes were like protruding black jade, flashing a bright light. It bared its teeth and bit towards Xiao Hua's head. The strange insect's sneak attack and this attack were very ingenious. If Xiao Hua didn't know ethereal steps and other martial arts, he would definitely be able to dodge the sneak attack. Xiao Hua's body twisted strangely, dodging the tentacles. Unconsciously, his heart was filled with killing intent. Taking advantage of this gap, he put away the sword gourd and took out the wishful wand. After a few chong 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 sounds, he raised the wishful wand and shouted, "Eat this Zhao's staff!" While speaking, the wishful wand took advantage of the strange insect's momentum and smashed towards the strange insect's head. The strange insect seemed to know the power of the wishful wand. Without waiting for the wishful wand to reach a few feet in front of it, the two strong hind legs kicked, and its whole body suddenly disappeared. Even with Xiao Hua's Dharma eye, he couldn't see where it went. This? Xiaohua had a bitter taste in his mouth. This kind of tactic was also his usual specialty. He didn't expect that a strange insect would use it to deal with him today. Well, then I'll let you know what this Xiao's means are. Xiaohua grinned and a faint golden light flashed around his body. A Dharma body was quickly born from his body. Even in the void, the golden light illuminated the surrounding dozens of feet. When the Dharma body grew about 10 feet high, the wishful wand in Xiaohua's hand also turned into a size of 10 feet. At this time, just at the edge of the golden light, the strange insect just happened to reveal its body. Fight! Xiaohua didn't hesitate, and waved his arms a few feet thick. The wishful wand made a silent sound. Before it fell, it had already imprisoned the space where the strange insect was. Pa! The strange insect seemed to have just come out of the magical power, and had no spare strength to dodge. Without the slightest accident, the wishful wand smashed heavily on the back of the strange insect. Xiaohua could even hear the sound of the strange insect being smashed out. Grandma, this guy is too powerful! Xiaohua finally breathed a sigh of relief and scolded. This Xiao is a Yuanying stage master, but I was actually chased by a little guy like you. If people knew, how could this Xiao establish his Tao? Before Xiaohua could finish, the scene in front of him scared him again. He saw that the strange insect, which was a lot smaller than the wishful wand, had now been smashed into a pancake the size of a foot. However, this pancake flew out from under the wishful wand and then swelled up like a balloon. The two tentacles frantically slashed at the wishful wand. No mistake, right? This can't kill it? Xiaohua felt a sense of powerlessness in his heart. In the moment when Xiaohua was stunned, the strange insect's tentacles had already wrapped around the wishful wand. Xiaohua only felt a burst of tremors in his hand and looked at the wishful wand again. There were a few scratches left on it. Shrink! Xiaohua was distressed and hurriedly let the wishful wand shrink. While it was shrinking, he quickly pulled the wishful wand from the strange insect's tentacles and hurriedly put it into the space. When the wishful wand was put into the space, Xiaohua's heart moved again. It was not easy for ordinary cultivators to put into the space, but this strange insect could, right? If it could be put into the space, wouldn't it be up to him to pinch, flatten, and file? Thinking of this, Xiaohua tried to release his consciousness. Who would have thought that as soon as his consciousness touched the strange insect, he would immediately feel like it was being corroded? How could Xiaohua still care about collecting the strange insect? He hurriedly withdrew his consciousness and turned around to escape. Xiaohua was defeated. The strange insect wanted to take advantage of the victory to pursue and attack. However, the strange insect spread its two wings and rushed toward Xiaohua, but this time it attacked Xiaohua's Dharma body. Now, Xiaohua's Dharma body was 10 feet tall, and his movements were not agile. How fast was the strange insect? In a flash, it had already pounced on the thick arm of Xiaohua's Dharma body, and then, it opened its saw-toothed mouth and began to bite. The Dharma body was actually damaged by the strange insect's bite. Good! Xiaohua was a little panicked. He could not escape, and he could not fight. This locust-like strange insect also had a good appetite. Whether it was a magic tool or a Dharma body, it wanted to eat everything. What should he do? Xiaohua did not doubt that even his own body and the nascent soul in his body would be food for this strange insect. It was no wonder that the nascent soul in his body was so scared. What should I do? What should I do? Xiaohua was really at his wits' end. He anxiously thought of a way to defeat the enemy. At this time, the strange insect was on Xiaohua's arm. Xiaohua did not dare to put away his Dharma body. Xiaohua thought for a moment, and with a wave of his other hand, the hand of the nascent soul appeared and grabbed the strange insect. Go to hell! Xiaohua waved his hand, wanting to throw the strange insect far away. Unfortunately, the strange insect opened its mouth and swallowed the hand of the nascent soul. Xiaohua could not even get rid of it. Xiaohua had heard of a hero cutting his wrist, but he did not expect that there would be a day when he would be reduced to this kind of embarrassing situation. Fortunately, it was only the hand of the nascent soul. Xiaohua shouted. Go! The nascent soul's hand broke into pieces. Xiaohua didn't dare to use the lightning evasion technique. Instead, he used the Confucian cultivators riding the clouds and riding the mist technique to hastily escape from the passage and plunge into the passage on the left. After experiencing this strange insect, the previous torrent and splendor became child's play. Xiaohua was not afraid that there would be any more dangers in this passage. Xiaohua even hoped that there would be some kind of danger in this passage that he could use to deal with the strange insect. Unfortunately, Xiaohua was disappointed. Not only was this passage very safe, there was no danger at all. Even the strange insect quickly caught up and pounced on Xiaohua with its teeth bared. Xiaohua did not know whether to laugh or cry. This strange insect was like stepping on dog shit, staring at him. If he could not kill it, he was afraid that he would not be able to have peace in the future. Are you trying to test this father's means? Xiaohua sneered and formed a seal with both hands, preparing to use the power of mountains of the Buddha seal catalog to kill the strange insect. However, the Buddha seal had just formed. Thinking that even the wishful staff could not kill this thing, what use could the power of mountains of the Buddha seal catalog have? Perhaps only the power of the stars and the power of karma that he had not yet comprehended would be useful, right? In addition to the Buddha seal, Xiaohua also had the innate true water. Xiaohua waved his hand, and the innate true water fell out of the air and covered the strange insect. In his eyes, the blue light of the water was very dazzling, and the grayish-black color of the strange insect was completely hidden in the light of the water. I don't know if it will work this time. After experiencing the attack of the strange splendor, Xiaohua did not dare to believe in the innate true water. He looked at the innate true water with some apprehension in his heart. Suddenly, Xiaohua patted his forehead and said, Damn it, this father doesn't care if it works or not. Don't I have to escape now? While this thing is trapped, this father can't escape, right? While speaking, Xiaohua's body flashed with lightning, and he rushed into the passage. He only flew out 100 feet, but the brilliance of the innate true water suddenly became dazzling, and even the void was illuminated. Then, the innate true water that trapped the strange insect began to freeze. Finally, in the silence, countless cracks appeared in the ice, and the strange insect broke out of the ice again. Its two hind legs kicked the void and disappeared. -12. Chapter 3387. Seeing the innate primordial water that had always been successful outside the void lose its effect again, Xiaohua completely lost his fighting spirit. Although Yu Leijing was extremely arrogant, there was no sound in the void after all. Moreover, Xiaohua had just advanced to the Yuanying stage, and the spiritual power in his body was abnormally abundant. In order to escape from the mouth of the strange insect, Xiaohua completely abandoned the principle of keeping a low profile and fled in this void maze in panic. Xiaohua was also unlucky. This strange insect was really powerful. Xiaohua relied on his outstanding void perception and fainted several times in this void maze, but he still couldn't get rid of the strange insect. Even the small collapse of the void like the first time, Xiaohua encountered several times. But every time Xiaohua went directly from one passage to another, before he could calm down, the strange insect quietly appeared near him again. It was as if this strange insect could directly pass through the void. Moreover, this strange insect's perception also passed through the passage, and its magical power was far beyond Xiaohua's. Of course, when Xiaohua shook the strange insect was also not to be trifled with. Several times it actually saw through Xiaohua's tricks and rushed in front of Xiaohua. Xiaohua used the innate primordial water to maintain himself and also used the blood drop paradise, Samadhi true fire and other magical powers. Not to mention that the Samadhi true fire was eaten by the strange insect in one gulp, just the blood drop paradise alone. Before Xiaohua could form the blood helmet, the strange insect's wings spread open and trembled rapidly. Xiaohua originally thought that the strange insect was afraid, but who knew that the strange insect was even faster than before and almost rushed into Xiaohua's mouth. It turned out that the strange insect was excited. Xiaohua had no choice but to escape again. During the time he was escaping, Xiaohua also understood that there was something on his body that attracted the strange insect. As for what it was, Xiaohua was not sure, but Xiaohua already had some understanding. If there was no accident, it should be the phenomenon of his yuanying stage that attracted the strange insect. Thinking about the strange insect swallowing the Dharma and swallowing the fluctuations, maybe it was the yuanying in his body that attracted it. Since he couldn't give up on the yuanying, he could only escape. The way he escaped was really dark. Xiaohua's lofty aspirations of just advancing to the yuanying stage had already been trampled under the feet of the strange insect. Looking at the pitch-black and endless void in front of him, and then looking at the black and humane strange insect behind him, Xiaohua wanted to cry but had no tears. I'm just advancing to the nascent soul stage. Why is the heavens playing such a joke on me? It was no wonder that Xiaohua was sorrowful. When others advanced to the nascent soul realm, which one of them didn't enter seclusion for dozens of years? After carefully comprehending the heavenly Tao, one's Tao heart would be calm and one's Tao foundation would be stable. Once one's heart and mind merged with the heavens, one would be able to conceive a baby in one's golden core? When pregnant, who didn't hide far away and stay away from people? Some of them even went to the blessed enclave to look for their seniors to protect them. Xiaohua, on the other hand, not only did he get a Jindan comparable to a nebula, he even got a hidden Jindan by accident. His divine sense couldn't even detect it. This was simply unprecedented. Even he himself didn't know how to conceive a baby. Now that they were in the void, the strange fluctuations actually carried traces of the heavenly Tao. What was special was that Xiaohua's hidden pill could actually be seen in the void. This was also a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Xiaohua. Finally, after using more than 1,000 nascent gestation pills, he was able to conceive a baby. If he could conceive a baby smoothly, that would also be good. Xiaohua once again encountered a strong void storm. It was unknown whether it was the void storm that made Xiaohua successful, or Xiaohua's nascent gestation that pushed the void storm forward. In short, 100 years ago, Xiaohua's nascent gestation pill brought disaster to the sword mound. The sword mound that took an unknown number of years to form was destroyed in an instant. Now, Xiaohua's nascent gestation pill brought disaster to the spatial vein. An unknown number of spatial passages were also destroyed in an instant. Thinking about a cultivator like Xiaohua, who brought disaster step by step, how could the heavenly Tao not favor him? The pitiful Xiaohua was already powerless under the ravaging of the heavenly Tao. Without any scruples, he urged his imperial thunder to fly into any spatial passage he saw. When he saw any void collapse, he rushed in. That strange insect was even more arrogant. When it saw Xiaohua's flickering lightning, it didn't have any pupils, only a pair of hard-shell eyes flashed with black light. It either spread its wings and chased after Xiaohua like a pair of lovebirds under the heavenly Tao, or it kicked its legs and emerged from under Xiaohua's feet. Every time it got close to Xiaohua's side, it would stick out its fangs without any pity for the fairer sex. It couldn't wait to bite off a piece of Xiaohua's flesh. Xiaohua couldn't bear this kind of intimacy. He tried to think of ways to avoid it. Either he hit it on the head with the wishful staff or poured cold water on it. But these methods couldn't extinguish the fire in the strange insect's heart. It even made the strange insect fly into a rage. After chasing for more than an hour, Xiaohua didn't know where he had escaped to. He only knew that the Taoist robe he had just put on was already tattered like cotton. Seeing the strange insect shamelessly opening its sawtooth on his back, and those whip-like tentacles wanting to pull him into its arms, Xiaohua suddenly lowered his body and dodged the strange insect's intimacy. Then, he desperately flew down. There was no direction in the void. At first, Xiaohua was still flying down rapidly. After a while, he adjusted his body slightly and flew horizontally. At this time, the void was a bit strange. There was an inexplicable light in the darkness. These light rays could be seen with the naked eye. And where these light rays penetrated, there were some faint ripples like water ripples. Xiaohua didn't know what these ripples were, but when he saw the abnormality in the void, he was secretly happy. This was because he knew that only the abnormality could give him a chance to escape. Xiaohua's joy had just been born when the strange insect immediately exposed its head a few feet in front of his head. This ugly head instantly extinguished Xiaohua's joy. At this point, Xiaohua couldn't help but admire this strange insect. Its tracking ability was truly top-notch. This void was simply like its home. No matter where he fled to, it would always appear within a distance of less than 3 meters from him. Just as Xiaohua was about to use the wishful staff, a few feet behind Xiaohua, the place where the light rays had just appeared suddenly rippled with a layer of black ash. Xiaohua was overjoyed when he saw this. He knew that another channel had collapsed. Almost without thinking, he came to a sudden stop and then flew backward, rushing into the grayish-black dot. When Xiaohua flew into the black dot, which was just the size of a fist, had expanded to the size of a person. It was just enough for Xiaohua to fly through. During this period of escape, Xiaohua already knew that although this strange insect could use a magical ability that was close to teleportation, this method could not be used continuously. Generally speaking, the strange insect had to fly steadily for a while before it could continue to use its hind legs to teleport. This time, the strange insect had just teleported, so he was afraid that it could not immediately catch up. He had to use this opportunity to escape. In front of Xiaohua's eyes was a mixture of gray and black. He knew that he was about to enter another channel. With the little light in this void channel, Xiaohua probably looked at the strange insect that was somewhat furious as it chased after him. Now, the collapse that Xiaohua stretched out was temporary. The time it took to form was very short. Xiaohua had calculated before that it could only allow him to pass through. Although the strange insect flew very fast, by the time it caught up, the collapse had already disappeared. Of course, if Xiaohua was lucky and came to a more complicated void channel, he might be able to escape the strange insect's tracking. Xiaohua's eyes darkened, and then it lit up again. It was just like when he used the transmission array on the Xiaoyu continent. Xiaohua slightly frowned as he looked at the void channel that he had just entered. He could not help but feel a little strange. This channel was completely different from the previous one. It was like a place under the sky. Xiaohua's surroundings were full of light, but where did this light come from? Xiaohua could not find the reason for a while. Looking at the collapse that Xiaohua had just passed through, as he had expected, it had already turned into a clear cloud that was gradually closing up. Damn it, who cares where this is? Escaping with my life is more important. Xiaohua was stunned, but he came to a realization. He cursed inwardly, and lightning flashed around his body as he prepared to fly in a certain direction. As soon as he activated the lightning escape technique, the familiar sound of lightning came from his body with a rumbling sound. "I'll hear!" Xiaohua cried out in surprise, and hurriedly released his divine sense. Sure enough, there was actually not dense heaven-earth origin qi in this channel. Gurgle gurgle. Xiaohua hesitated for a moment, and the sound of boiling water came from above his head again. Xiaohua's divine sense swept over, and his expression changed greatly. Who else could it be? Naturally, it was the enemy that came out from the 2 tentacles. Go! Xiaohua did not have time to look anymore. His whole body turned into a bolt of lightning, and he flew into the distance several times faster than the previous void. Who would have thought that just as Xiaohua flew out for more than 1,000 feet, just 100 feet in front of his head, another silver brilliance flashed, and immediately the void began to rotate rapidly. In just a moment, a channel of several feet in size appeared out of thin air, and in this channel, another monster appeared. Ah! Xiaohua was really surprised. His heart was shocked, but he calmed down again. He stretched out his hand, and the wishful staff was already in his hand. Now that he was in a desperate situation with a wolf in front and a tiger behind, he could only choose to fight. The monster quickly flew out of the channel and arrived in front of Xiaohua. Xiaohua's eyes narrowed slightly, and with the help of the light in the space, he saw that the monster was several feet in size. Its whole body was gray, and the surface of its body was as smooth as oil. The light in the space shone on it, and produced a reflection of light. There were no wings on the monster's back, only a dozen spike-like protrusions that stood straight on its spine. The monster's body was upright and slightly tilted, with two thick hind legs standing in midair, and two thin and short forelegs slightly hugging the front of its chest. Whether it was the forelegs or the hind legs, in front of its foreclaws, the sharp points were emitting a green brilliance. Behind the monster, a thick tail like a lion's tail was fluffy, and where it swayed slightly, the gray mane was shining. -12. Chapter 3388. The monster's head was not big, it was triangular, and its two eyes were also very small, as if it could not open them. In particular, the two eyes were far away from the top of its head, which seemed very uncoordinated. Although the monster's eyes were not big, what made Xiaohua puzzled was that when he was on guard, he could see the same surprise and shock in the monster's small eyes. The monster flew out of the passage and saw Xiaohua standing in front of it with the staff. Ayo! It let out a long roar and its figure actually retreated, as if it was also avoiding Xiaohua. However, the monster had only retreated half a meter. Just as it was about to exit the tunnel, it seemed to have been stung by a scorpion. A layer of gray light flowed around its body, and its several-meter-long body suddenly turned into a sharp spike, charging towards Xiaohua. Xiaohua sneered and swept behind him with his divine sense. The strange insect had already stretched half of its body out of the void, so he raised the staff in his hand and shouted, "Evil creature, eat this Zhao's staff!" Woo! The staff waved, stirring up the wind and clouds, and flew towards the monster with Xiaohua. But strangely, before he could make the wishful scepter bigger, the monster actually turned around and rushed towards the top of Xiaohua's head. This was really beyond Xiaohua's expectations. Ha! Although Xiaohua was puzzled, he was happy in his heart. The direction the monster was going was where the strange insect's head was, and in front of him was the passage left by the monster when it came in. If he flew into the passage and the strange insect was blocked by the monster, wouldn't he have a chance to live? After thinking about it, Xiaohua swung the wishful steel staff. Just like the monster, he urged the lightning escape to rush towards the passage. "Evil creature! Where are you going?" Xiaohua had just flown half a foot when a loud voice came from the passage. Under the flash of golden light, another figure of several feet rushed out of the passage. "Confucian cultivator!" The figure of several feet in size had not yet appeared, but the voice of the inscription with the ancient charm fell into Xiaohua's ears. Xiaohua was overjoyed. It was really a feeling of meeting an old friend in a foreign land. Immediately, a strong man wearing a golden armor and standing on a cloud rushed out of the passage with a three-pointed double-edged sword in his hand. The strong man was 4 feet tall, with a purple gold crown on his head, and a fist-sized pearl inlaid on the golden crown. Under the golden crown was a big bronze face, with thick eyebrows and big eyes, a lion's nose and tiger's mouth. It was very mighty. On the 40 feet tall body, a glittering golden chain mail was very eye-catching. In front of the chainmail's head was a heart-protecting mirror that was a few feet in size. It glowed with a faint golden light, which was the convergence of thousands of inscriptions on the armor. In the middle of the chainmail was a chain belt that was coiled around the waist. The entire chain belt was in the shape of a dragon. The dragon's body protected the burly man's waist, and the ferocious dragon's head floated above the waist. Where the light flowed, the dragon's head faintly opened its mouth and roared. The lower half of the chainmail was thousands of floating clouds, which were also formed by the inscriptions on the armor. When the burly man flew, these floating clouds also moved, and layers of golden light protected the lower half of the burly man's body. Looking at the man's hand, there was a three-pointed, double-edged blade that was also emitting a bronze luster. There was a trace of gray blood on the tip of the blade. If he was not mistaken, it was left behind by the monster that had just escaped. The strong man flew into the space and opened his huge eyes to look around. He immediately found something strange. A gaze swept over Xiaohua, and he called out strangely, "Thou art Buddhist sect fellow Immortal? Why are you in this space node?" The strong man's tone was very contemptuous, and even had a trace of hostility. His huge eyes faintly carried vigilance. Xiao Hua naturally knew that the strong man's target was the monster. It had nothing to do with him, so he did not say much. He casually waved his hand and flew toward the passage. You! The strong man slightly frowned, but his figure did not stop, as if he did not care about Xiao Hua. He moved his gaze away from Xiao Hua and looked at the distant monster and the strange insect that had just appeared. Ayo! At this time, the monster had already rushed between the strange insect and the strong man. It was roaring at the strange insect. The strange insect did not pay attention to it at first and flew toward Xiao Hua. Moreover, it waved its hind legs and wanted to teleport. But the monster continued to roar, and the 4 zhang tall strong man chased after it. Even the cold light on the 3-pointed double-edged sword attracted the strange insect's attention. Roar! Although the strange insect was small, its roar was very loud, not inferior to the monster's. After a few roars, the strange insect gave up on Xiao Hua. With a stomp of its legs, its entire body disappeared. The monster suddenly turned around. Its body, which was several zhang long, seemed to have no bones. It was even more ferocious than the dark clouds covering the sky as it pounced toward the burly man. The strong man looked at the disappearance of the strange insect with a strange expression. Then, he used his huge eyes to sweep over Xiao Hua, who was rushing toward the passage that was about to be sealed. He naturally understood the cause and effect of this. Seeing that the monster had unexpectedly counterattacked, the 3-pointed double-edged sword in his hand danced, and he also paid attention to the traces of the strange insect. At this moment, there was no one who understood the strange insect's trick more than Xiao Hua. He had been paying attention to the strange insect all along. Now, seeing that the strange insect had actually abandoned him and surrounded the strong man with the monster, Xiao Hua's heart trembled. Xiao Hua was not clear about the strength of the strong man. However, the strength of the huge eyes technique was not inferior to his own divine sense. This meant that the strong man was at least a 5th-level Essence Energy Martial Grandmaster. Of course, Xiao Hua also hoped that the strong man had the power to subdue dragons and tigers, and kill the strange insect and the monster one by one, so that he could escape. However, since the strange insect could abandon him to help the monster attack the human race, why would he abandon his own clansmen and only care about escaping? Thinking about what old monster Jifeng and Ao Shuai said, the spirit of all living things was the demon race, Xiao Hua's heart felt very uncomfortable. If he took advantage of the chaos to escape and built his life on the sacrifice of others, even if the strong man was a Confucian cultivator, Xiao Hua would definitely not agree. Would that kind of Xiao Hua still be Xiao Hua? Without hesitation, Xiao Hua immediately stopped flying and used the wind escape technique to fly towards the strong man. As he flew, he hurriedly transmitted his voice. "Fellow Immortal, be careful about 4 feet below you." "And?" The strong man stared blankly, clearly not expecting Xiao Hua to turn around. He actually glanced at Xiao Hua with some surprise. Seeing the strong man look at him, Xiao Hua's heart thumped, knowing that the situation was bad. Clearly, although the strong man was vigilant, in his heart, he did not take the strange insect seriously. Xiao Hua made a prompt decision and formed a hand seal with both hands. Rumble! The lightning attraction technique was displayed. Although the dark clouds didn't appear in the space, layers of lightning still appeared above the burly man's head and poured down like a waterfall towards the burly man's feet. The strong man was naturally shocked and raised his head in disbelief. At the same time, he raised the 3-pointed, double-edged sword in his hand, as if guarding against Xiao Hua's sneak attack. At the same time the strong man raised his head, 2 tentacles stretched out from the place where the lightning fell. As soon as the tentacles touched the lightning, they immediately trembled, then hastily retracted and disappeared. Hiss! The strong man sucked in a breath of cold air. He really did not expect that in just the blink of an eye, the strange insect would actually catch up to him. If it were not for Xiao Hua's warning and Xiao Hua's lightning manipulation technique, he feared that he would have suffered a big loss. Moreover, the strong man also clearly saw that although Xiaohua's lightning manipulation technique was powerful, when it hit the strange insect's tentacles, the tentacles only trembled for a moment and immediately retracted. In other words, the strange insect was not afraid of the lightning strike that even he was afraid of. If the tentacles really succeeded in sneak attacking him, what would his end be? The strong man shuddered. Looking at the strange insect that attacked the strong man from the other side, when the lightning was produced, it also stopped abruptly. Its upright body also flickered with a gray brilliance, as if it was covered in a layer of oily light. Dozens of lightning bolts fell, but they did not stop on the strange insect's skin and directly slid down, not harming a single hair on the strange insect. Roar! The first wave of lightning poured down, but before Xiaohua could activate the lightning manipulation technique a second time, a deafening sound resounded in the entire space. Xiaohua frowned and felt a wave of dizziness in his mind. He immediately activated God's traction and blocked this unexpected sound attack. The strong man was also caught unprepared. His 40-feet-long bronze-colored body slightly swayed, and then, without waiting for Xiaohua's warning, the three-pointed, double-edged sword drew a cold light in the air and suddenly stabbed into the air. King! With a muffled sound, a ripple appeared in the air, and the strange insect's figure was revealed. The three-pointed, double-edged sword pierced the back of the strange insect. The strange insect tried its best to twist, but for a while, it could not break free. Hiss! Seeing this, Xiaohua could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. His eyes were drooling as he looked at the majestic weapon. Fellow Immortal, be careful of the weapon! Suddenly, Xiaohua thought of something and hurriedly reminded. Unfortunately, just as Xiaohua's words were shouted, the strange insect's hind legs suddenly crossed in midair and cut on the back of the three-pointed, double-edged sword. Zalala! After a disgusting sound that made people's skin crawl, the strange insect took advantage of the momentum to escape from the tip of the sword and left a shallow mark on the sword. Damn it! The strong man roared. Apparently, he was also extremely distressed. He urged the clouds to dance and stabbed the strange insect again. Seeing that the strong man was concentrating on dealing with the strange insect and ignoring the restless monster, Xiaohua did not know what the strong man was thinking. He opened his hand and took the wishful staff in his hand and shouted, "Grow, grow, 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 grow!" As the wishful staff grew longer, Xiaohua's heavenly law embodiment technique and Vajradharma body were also displayed. A Buddhist Vajra with a height of 5 feet and a diameter of a bowl appeared in the air. Woo! The tip of the wishful staff made a whimpering sound, and the area where the monster was located was shrouded by the wind of the staff. When the monster saw this, instead of retreating, it moved forward. With a kick of its hind legs, its whole body turned into a gray color and rushed toward the wishful staff. -12. Chapter 3389. Granny, how did these monsters become spirits? They are even more cunning than the human race! Xiaohua secretly cursed in his heart. The monster was so direct that his wishful steel rod did not completely fall down. The weight of the wishful steel rod was much lighter than when it fell down. The monster's action was to seize a slight opportunity. With a muffled sound, the wishful steel staff hit the back of the monster, which was also sent by the monster. Xiaohua's arms trembled, and then he saw the monster's oily body flash. His wishful steel staff once again slipped from the monster's skin. Moreover, Xiaohua could clearly see that when the wishful steel staff slipped, the muscles under the monster's oily skin were trembling rapidly. It was not so much fear, but more like it was unloading the force. Immortal friend! The strong man's very majestic voice came. This beast is called Penetrating Void. Not only can it walk freely in the void, but the surface of its body is also covered with a strange oil. This oil is slippery and is what this beast relies on to walk in the void. If it were not for the weapon that can tear the void, I am afraid it would not be easy to deal with. Granny, I'll let you hide, I'll let you hide. Xiaohua listened to the strong man's reminder, and then looked at the strong man who was fighting with the strange insect. He was far less embarrassed than himself. The Vajradharmakaya of the size of 5 feet madly swung the wishful steel staff in the air, displaying the Tong Tian staff technique. The staff was faster than the previous one, and the staff chased after the monster to hit it. At first, the monster was still able to resist. Like a lump of oily dough, it allowed Xiaohua to beat it. But after a long time, Xiaohua's strength did not seem to be exhausted. At first, the monster was obviously unable to endure. Seeing Xiaohua's staff strike again, the monster dodged and disappeared. Pooh! The sound was much louder than before. Immediately after, the monster let out a miserable cry and looked towards the direction of the strange insect. Roar! At the same time, the strange insect was afraid of the strong man's weapon. It hid in the void several times to sneak attack the strong man, but it was hit by the strong man's 3-pointed double-edged sword. It was a little anxious. Now that it heard the monster's screams, it became even more furious. With a loud roar, its 2 hind legs crossed in the air at the same time, like 2 long swords slashing at the strong man's body. Ha ha! A mere bug dares to be arrogant in front of this true lord! The burly man laughed and waved the 3-pointed, double-edged sword in the air. Then, he stretched out his left hand. Buzz! The entire space vibrated and countless clouds appeared out of thin air. Then, the burly man clenched his left hand into a fist and punched at the 2 hind legs of the strange insect. Following the burly man's fist, the countless clouds that had just appeared turned into thousands of noble chi, sweeping up hurricanes, forming a vast chi pillar that attacked the strange insect from all directions. Shit! Xiaohua was shocked again. He couldn't be bothered to kill the monster, and hurriedly sent a voice transmission. Fellow Immortal, be careful. This bug can devour the essence energy of heaven and earth. Ah? The brawny man was shocked and hurriedly tried to withdraw his fist, but how could he stop now? Rumble! Hundreds of chi pillars comparable to Xiaohua's thunder-attracting technique descended from the sky and blasted towards the strange insect. The body of the strange insect rolled continuously under this intense bombardment. Humph! Seeing the strange insect like this, the brawny man coldly snorted, looking rather obstinate and self-opinionated. However, after a moment, although the strange insect was still rolling within the chi pillars and looked extremely distressed, its originally 2 feet long shell actually slowly expanded until it was 4 or 5 feet long. Xiaohua's mouth was somewhat bitter. This strange insect was really cunning. When it was fighting with the brawny man, it didn't reveal the slightest ability to devour the essence energy of heaven and earth. It had been hiding until now. The brawny man's move was indeed powerful, but it had also fed the strange insect until it was full. Humans are still inferior to insects. When did the world become so strange? Xiaohua sighed and thought with emotion. If this Xiao didn't have some misgivings about this Confucian cultivator, I'm afraid I would have already told him about the abilities of this strange insect. Why would I have let this Confucian cultivator enter the trap? And if this Confucian cultivator had told this Xiao everything about this strange insect, I'm afraid this Xiao wouldn't have to waste so much effort, right? Fellow Immortal. Thinking of this, Xiaohua hurriedly sent a sound transmission. Don't worry, first stall this insect. Wait until I kill this beast, then we'll work together to kill this insect. The brawny man looked up and down at Xiaohua's Dharma body, which was even larger than his own, and a trace of a sneer appeared on his face. Why don't you deal with this insect and let me kill this monster? It seems like this strange insect was originally chasing you to kill you, right? Fellow Immortal. Xiaohua didn't hide anything and hurriedly explained. My methods mostly use the essence energy of heaven and earth. The weapon in my hand can't cause the strange insect to have any misgivings, so I can't stall the strange insect as easily as Fellow Immortal. This monster should be Fellow Immortal's target, right? Fellow Immortal can rest assured, even if I kill this beast, it will belong to Fellow Immortal. I don't want a single strand of hair. Xiaohua said very sincerely, but the brawny man was still somewhat hesitant. When did your Buddhist sect use the essence energy of heaven and earth? Xiaohua suddenly understood. He touched his bald head and said with a smile, I am Dao sect Xiaohua, not a Buddhist sex disciple. It's just that I encountered danger in the void passage, so the hair on my head no longer exists. Dao sect? The brawny man was slightly stunned. Soon after, a trace of understanding appeared in his eyes. He nodded and said, "So what you used just now was Dao sect's lightning attracting technique? Be careful." At this moment, the strange insect had already stopped rolling in the righteous chi. Its body, which was close to 10 feet long, streaked across the sky like a gray shadow and once again flew towards the brawny man. "I am Confucian cultivator Sun Jian." That brawny man already knew how powerful the strange insect was. How could he still dare to be negligent? His 2 hands brandished the 3-pointed, double-edged blade, blocking the strange insect. He also hurriedly said, "Not only does the penetrating void beast's skin and flesh have a rare toughness that is hard to break, its eyes even have the penetrating void eye, which can break open the void. If the penetrating void beast attacks with this, it will be even more powerful. If not for the penetrating void divine weapon, any defense would be unable to withstand a single blow. Fortunately, this beast has already used the penetrating void eye just now. It will need some time before it can use it again. You can try your best to find a way to kill this beast during this time." Although the brawny man spoke somewhat vaguely, Xiaohua had already understood that this Confucian cultivator Sun Jian had indeed utterly defeated the penetrating void beast by relying on the 3-pointed, double-edged blade in his hand. He didn't have such a divine weapon, so he probably had to think of another way. If it was a method to kill this beast, the first thing Xiaohua thought of was the soul execution origin light. That strange insect was very peculiar. It seemed to have no soul and was unable to have its mind pinned down by the soul execution origin light. This penetrating void beast might not be the same. As long as it was pinned down by the soul execution origin light, even if the penetrating void beast's skin and flesh were strange, it would probably still be killed by the soul execution origin light. But the problem was that the soul execution origin light was Xiaohua's killer. Xiaohua didn't want to reveal it to outsiders. Moreover, the soul execution origin light's sharpness seemed to be insufficient to break open the void. Xiaohua also didn't have the confidence to truly kill the penetrating void beast. Thinking of sharpness, Xiaohua naturally thought of the sword light in his middle dantian. The 9 flying swords transformed from sword chi should be the sharpest weapon in Xiaohua's hands right now. But obviously, these 9 swords weren't divine weapons. Even if they were used, they wouldn't be able to accomplish anything. Moreover, his Confucian cultivator's cultivation was really too shallow. There was no need to make a fool of himself in front of this 5th-level Essence Energy Great Grandmaster. Forget it. Xiaohua's mind spun a few thoughts. The wishful staff in his hand once again made that beast stagger a few times. Xiaohua made a decision. Or should I use the sword gourd? Let's kill this beast first. Thinking of this, Xiaohua flung his hand and used the Yuanying's hand. He prepared to seal the penetrating void beast's surroundings in preparation for the sword gourd. Who would have thought that just as the Yuanying's hand was used, the penetrating void beast's body immediately flashed with a faint gray brilliance. A kind of slippery feeling transmitted from the Yuanying's hand. The space around the penetrating void beast seemed to have been sealed. But in this space, the penetrating void beast was still twisting like a loach. So much so that the top of the penetrating void beast's head flashed with a black and white light. An inch-long sharp spike suddenly emerged. An ice-cold feeling that was even more painful than the sharp spike transmitted from Xiaohua's Naiwen Palace. Powerful, Xiaohua sensed that the innate divine restriction outside his Naiwen Palace was suffused with a golden light. He knew that this penetrating void beast actually had an attack similar to a soul spike. He couldn't help but look at this penetrating void beast in a new light. Previously, when he saw this monster being chased into a sorry state by Sun Jian, and when he didn't see how powerful it was after fighting with it for so long, he had already felt contempt for it. Now, it seemed that a monster that could break through the void was definitely not as simple as he thought. Although the spike only hit the Yuanying's hand, it could still pierce into the Naiwen Palace through the Yuanying's divine sense. It was not inferior to his own soul spike. If it was an ordinary cultivator, they would have been injured. It would be normal even if they died. It is impolite to come and go. Xiaohua sneered and immediately used the soul spike technique. This soul spike technique was originally very powerful with the help of the sun's shrouding art. Now that Xiaohua had just advanced to the Yuanying realm, although his realm was not stable, the pressure and divine sense of the Yuanying realm had risen. When he used it, even gods and ghosts would be unable to escape. The spike that had just grown out of the penetrating void beast flashed with a strong black and white light and rapidly shrank. Its small head shook like a rattled drum. The unstable space within a few dozen feet of the penetrating void beast also shook violently. Layers of ripples gradually formed in the void. Buzz buzz! Just when Xiaohua was confident in his victory and pondered about what method he should use to kill this void-penetrating beast, there was a sound that sounded like a group of mountains flapping their wings. Not only did the spatial fluctuation caused by the void-penetrating beast stop spreading in all directions, it instead suddenly contracted. In a few breaths, it seeped into the void-penetrating beast's body like flowing water. At the same time, the sharp spike that had just retracted suddenly extended out from the top of the void-penetrating beast's head, and an extremely brilliant black and white brilliance shot towards Xiaohua's heart. Be careful, fellow immortal, this is the penetrating void eye. Sun Jian actually still had energy left, and hurriedly warned. -12. Chapter 3390. The black and white brilliance known as the penetrating void eye was really fast. By the time Xiaohua noticed it, it had already hit Xiaohua's heart. Seeing that it was about to touch the clothes that Xiaohua had taken out in a hurry, Xiaohua was shocked. He hurriedly used the ethereal steps and the wind escape technique. An afterimage appeared in place, and Xiaohua's figure barely dodged to the side. The black and white brilliance passed through Xiaohua's afterimage and went straight into the void. Ah! Cold sweat broke out on Xiaohua's head. He was secretly lucky to escape the attack. But immediately after, a sharp pain unexpectedly came from Xiaohua's heart. Xiaohua was greatly alarmed and involuntarily cried out. How is this possible? I have clearly dodged it. Fly 10 feet higher. Sun Jian's stern reminder sounded in Xiaohua's ears like a gong. Xiaohua did not hesitate and flew into the sky. He flew not only 10 feet, but more than 50 feet. Just as he steadied himself in the air, a black and white beam of light as thick as a bull shot out from the void behind his back. Xiaohua hurriedly accelerated the operation of the blood drop paradise in his body to eliminate the danger of the penetrating void beast's attack. On the one hand, he was ready to take out the sword gourd. The defense of this void-penetrating beast was impeccable. His wishful steel staff could only injure it, but it was difficult to kill it in one blow. The attack of the void-penetrating beast was so strange. Not only could it attack the entity through the virtual shadow, but it could also turn back through the void. If he fought for a long time, although he might not die, he would definitely suffer. He had just formed his nascent soul and his realm was not stable. If he was injured, it would definitely have a great impact on his Tao foundation. Thinking about it, Xiaohua waved his hand and the sword gourd was about to attack. However, at this moment, something that shocked Xiaohua happened once again. The void-penetrating beast was even more nimble than a swimming fish as it soared into the sky. The black and white brilliance that was as thick as the mouth of a bull accurately struck between its eyes. Pop! There was the sound of a bubble bursting. Although this sound was very soft, it caused the entire space to tremble slightly. After that, an eye the size of a bull suddenly opened between the void-penetrating beast's eyes as the black and white light hit it. His eyes were a mixture of grayish-white colors. Pieces of white were like white clouds floating in the grayish-white sky. Every piece of white cloud seemed to be the most precious thing in the world. Xiaohua's gaze was instantly attracted. Xiaohua's eyes were completely grayish-white. Hey, be careful, fellow Taoist! This is the second attack of the void-piercing eye. Just as Xiaohua's gaze fell on the third eye of the void-penetrating beast, the soul cultivator Xiaohua's sigh was like a sudden clap of thunder that woke Xiaohua up. Void-penetrating eye? Void-penetrating beast! Xiaohua came back to his senses at once as he suddenly realized something. The moment Xiaohua turned his eyes, a silver-white brilliance shot out even more rapidly than the black-white brilliance. Even the space between Xiaohua and the void-penetrating beast started to tremble intensely because of this silver-white brilliance. Dharma Eye? Xiaohua wasn't familiar with the black-white brilliance, but Xiaohua was extremely familiar with this silver-white brilliance. Wasn't it just an ordinary delusion breaker Dharma Eye and Goldie's third eye's silver light? Of course, the void-penetrating beast's silver light was clearly much more powerful than Xiaohua's delusion breaker Dharma Eye's silver light. Even if Xiaohua had the time to open his Dharma Eye, he might not necessarily be able to compete with the void-penetrating beast in terms of the power of the silver-white brilliance. Moreover, at this moment, that silver-white brilliance had already enveloped Xiaohua. Even if Xiaohua used the wind escape technique to dodge, it was unlikely that he would be able to escape unscathed. However, at such a critical moment, Xiaohua was so calm that it was frightening. That deathly white face of his actually revealed a trace of a smile. He was simply more confident than someone who had a card up his sleeve. Xiaohua didn't use any divine ability. He merely stretched out his left hand and held it flat in front of his chest. That silver-white brilliance that shook the space within a range of several jang obediently fell into Xiaohua's left palm like a chick returning to its nest. Seeing that the brilliance that filled the sky was annihilated by Xiaohua's palm, Sun Jian's eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. What's more, when that silver-white brilliance fell into Xiaohua's palm, that void-penetrating beast seemed to have lost its essence. It softly collapsed in midair, unexpectedly without any power to resist. Immortal! Fellow Immortal! Sun Jian was flabbergasted. He didn't have time to think about what kind of divine ability Xiaohua had used. He suddenly came to a realization. A kind of ecstasy rushed into his heart, and he shouted, "Quick! You quickly come and replace me!" Xiaohua understood that Sun Jian wanted him to deal with the strange insect while he came to kill the void-penetrating beast. Okay! Xiaohua agreed almost without hesitation. He waved the wishful staff in his hand and was about to fly over. However, before Sun Jian and Xiaohua could exchange places, that strange insect let out a strange "Ayo!" and its entire body swelled up again. With a kick of its hind legs, it actually wanted to rush to the void-penetrating beast in front of Sun Jian to save it. "It's too late!" Sun Jian instantly weighed the pros and cons and said anxiously, "Fellow Immortal, take this beast first." "Okay." Xiaohua frowned. Seeing that the strange insect was about to teleport away, he hurriedly swept the void-penetrating beast with his mind. The behemoth of several jang in size instantly fell into his space. Seeing that Xiaohua was so decisive and took the void-penetrating beast so nimbly, Sun Jian couldn't help but have a trace of doubt in his heart. After all, this void-penetrating beast was his main purpose in entering the space node this time, and he had spent a lot of energy to enter this time. Now that the strange beast was defeated by him, but it was taken by a cultivator he didn't know. Moreover, it was a Taoist cultivator. Whether he could get it back and what price he had to pay to get it back had become a big problem. However, just as he had doubts, the strange insect finally showed its power. The strange insect's body suddenly spewed out a gray mist. This gray mist was extremely viscous. As soon as it fell into the void, part of it evaporated and disappeared, while the other part covered the strange insect's body. "Fellow Immortal, this strange insect!" Sun Jian had a bad feeling in his heart. He hurriedly looked at Xiaohua, expecting Xiaohua to give a definite answer. Unfortunately, Xiaohua had never seen the strange insect act like this. He was also shocked. He waved the wishful staff in his hand and shouted, "Fellow Immortal Son, this is the first time I have encountered this strange insect. I don't know its origin. Now you and I have to work together without any gaps. This void-penetrating beast is useless to this little one. As long as this strange insect... No, as long as you and I can escape with our lives, this little one can immediately give the void-penetrating beast to you." "Escape?" When Sun Jian heard this, his face unconsciously showed arrogance. He waved the three-pointed double-edged sword in his hand and said coldly, "How can I escape when dealing with an insect? Although we are inside the space node, if others know about it, where will my face go? You don't have to say more, we will work together to kill this strange insect." Space node? Xiaohua was slightly stunned, and then he understood that this spatial node was probably another name for spatial veins. However, he still felt disdain towards Sun Jian's pride and face. "You're about to lose your life, so what face is there to talk about?" Unfortunately, Xiaohua looked around and saw that the previous passage had been closed. Although the space was large, with his understanding of the strange insect, he was afraid that he would not be able to escape the pursuit of the strange insect. He could only fight the enemy together with Sun Jian. Xiaohua had just flown to the other side of the strange insect when a sharp sound of wind filled the entire space. Behind the gray fog, the strange insect's body had doubled in size. It was already close to 3 zhang tall. Moreover, there were crescent-shaped grooves all over the strange insect's body. The sharp and ear-piercing sound of wind came from those grooves. Along with the sound of the wind, waves of heaven and earth yuan qi fell into the grooves. The strange insect's body gradually expanded again. As time passed, the suction force in the groove became stronger and stronger. Not only did the entire space shake, even Xiaohua and Sun Wu's Dharmakayas, which were dozens of feet in size, could not stand still. Furthermore, an extremely unfamiliar aura, which was similar to pressure or primordial thought, was being emitted from the strange insect. Xiaohua could feel his own divine thought, and even the Buddha Saraira could not help but jump out of his Naiwen palace and pounce towards that aura. Oh no! Xiaohua had never encountered such a strange attack. The innate divine restriction in his Naiwen palace flashed with golden light and protected the Buddha Saraira with his divine sense. Looking at Sun Jian, there was also shock on his face. Golden light flashed around his body. Obviously, he was also resisting. Moo! The strange insect spread its wings and let out a moo like a cow. It was unknown whether the sound came from the mouth of the strange insect or from its wings. Similarly, 2 faintly discernible phantoms flew out from the strange insect's wings and pounced towards Xiaohua and Sun Jian at the same time. Not waiting for the illusory figure to get close, a burst of indescribable coldness appeared around Xiaohua. Wisps of ice were actually formed in the air, and layers of white frost instantly appeared on Xiaohua's bald head. That coldness seemed to be able to freeze his bones. Xiaohua, who had not known the cold for a long time, could not help but shiver. Looking at the strange insect's malevolent shadow pouncing towards him, Xiaohua suddenly smiled coldly. That smile was even colder than the strange insect's shadow. This was because between Xiaohua's eyebrows, a dark green light flashed. The 2 small characters, thunder and lightning, appeared out of thin air. Then, a wave of lightning enveloped the space between Xiaohua and the strange insect. With a kacha sound, it landed on the strange insect's shadow. Moo! The strange insect's shadow was obviously caught unprepared. Even Xiaohua's attack was beyond its expectations. With just a layer of lightning, more than half of the strange insect's shadow was eliminated. The strange insect's shadow no longer dared to move forward. For the first time, it panicked and fled in front of Xiaohua. However, just as the strange insect retreated, Xiaohua's second wave of lightning ruthlessly poured down. The originally incomplete shadow was instantly destroyed by Xiaohua. Seeing that his attack had succeeded, Xiaohua was immediately filled with courage. Previously, this strange insect was like a thorny hedgehog. Xiaohua wanted to eat it, but he did not dare to open his mouth. Now that he finally had a breakthrough, it seemed that the soul cultivation technique was also effective against this strange insect. His lightning and thunder technique was enough to kill this strange insect. -12. Chapter 3391. Looking at Sun Jian in the distance, he was somewhat different from Xiaohua. Seeing the shadow of the strange insect pouncing over, he suddenly slashed with the 3-pointed, double-edged sword in his hand, directly chopping at the shadow. What was really surprising was that the shadow actually split into two pieces at the tip of the three-pointed, double-edged sword. However, at the corner of Sun Jian's mouth, before that sneer could appear, the two pieces of the shadow turned into two different shadows and continued to pounce on Sun Jian's body without slowing down. Humph! Sun Jian sneered again, not dodging at all. Golden light flowed around his body like a golden mountain. When the shadow pounced on the golden light, it let out a sizzling sound, and in a moment, more than half of it melted away. Aoo! The strange insect finally let out a roar, and the shadow turned into a wind. Without waiting for Sun Jian to attack further, it rushed into the strange insect's body, and the suction force of the crescent moonlight groove increased again. Since you're so greedy, I'll let you eat to your heart's content. Sun Jian seemed to have thought of something, and with a raise of his hand, the noble qi turned into a pillar of qi and bombarded the strange insect. The huge roar even made Xiao Hua look askance. He really didn't expect that the punches and kicks of Confucian cultivators could reach such a level. Sun Jian! Xiao Hua suddenly woke up. The Confucian military school seems to have been founded by Sun Wu, old Master Sun, right? According to Fu Jiwen, the Confucian scholars can command the wind and clouds, and the martial artists of the military school can also throw the wind and clouds into chaos with their punches and kicks. This Sun Jian might be a descendant of the military school. Seeing the huge wave of air rushing into the strange insect's body, the strange insect swelled up like a balloon. Its body grew bigger and bigger, and its saw-like tentacles and bloody mouth exuded a strange bloodthirsty aura. In particular, as the strange insect's body grew bigger, its terrifying aura also rapidly increased. According to Xiao Hua's estimation, in the time it took to eat a meal, this aura would definitely surpass his own pressure. Fellow Immortal Xiao! Sun Jian urged the noble qi to pour into the strange insect's body, and said, "This insect is extremely powerful, and its defense is even stronger than the void-penetrating beast. Although my weapon can injure this insect, it can't completely kill it. Furthermore, I've already thought about it for a long time, and I don't think any of my abilities can completely restrain this insect. From what I can see, this insect is able to pass through the void like the void-penetrating beast, and it even has the ability to teleport. Even if we try to escape, I'm afraid we won't be able to. The only thing we can do now is to fight it to the death." "That's exactly what I was thinking." Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. "However, it seems that fellow Immortal Sun wants to use his noble qi to make the strange insect explode, right? This road doesn't seem to be accessible. It's impossible for the noble spirit to make the insect explode, but if the noble spirit were to explode inside the insect's body, would I be able to help it from the outside?" Sun Jian seemed to have a bamboo shoot in his chest. He said with a smile, but the smile on his bronze face looked a little strange. "I understand." Xiao Hua nodded slightly. He didn't know what method Sun Jian had to make the massive amount of righteous qi explode in the strange insect's body, but Sun Jian's idea was indeed the only way. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and reminded, "What if I also gather some heaven-earth yuan qi for it?" "Do as you wish." Sun Jian smiled faintly. "Perhaps it's better than nothing?" "All right." Xiao Hua also smiled. He rubbed his hands together, and countless rays of light appeared in his palms. When Xiao Hua waved his hands, bursts of heavenly thunder poured into the space like a torrential downpour. They were even denser than hail as they smashed into the strange insect. "Oh?" Sun Jian raised his eyebrows. He was clearly a little surprised. Although Xiao Hua's lightning thunder technique was strange, its power and momentum were really small, so Sun Jian didn't pay attention to it at all. However, this lightning attraction technique actually shook the entire space. It was no wonder Sun Jian had a whole new level of respect for it. However, Sun Jian clearly had some foundation. He only raised his eyebrows, and the surprise only lasted for a moment before he focused on urging the noble spirit. In fact, it wasn't just Sun Jian who was surprised. Even Xiao Hua himself was greatly surprised. Before he reached nascent soul, Xiao Hua still had to form hand seals and the male and female lightning beast cores in his body also had to respond. Now, he didn't need to form any seals at all. It was as if the lightning in the sky was his and he could take it down with a wave of his hand. Could it be that my nascent soul stage is different? The male and female lightning beast cores have already fused with my nascent soul? My nascent soul is already able to completely sense lightning? Xiao Hua secretly pondered. He knew that a cultivator's nascent soul could directly communicate with the world and use the origin energy of the world. However, there was a limit to this communication. It also had to rely on the cultivation of the nascent soul to gradually obtain it. How could it be like him, who had just reached the nascent soul stage and could freely control lightning? At this moment, he looked at his dantian and saw that the tiny nascent soul that was exactly the same as him was no longer fearful. It gritted its teeth and waved its tiny hands and feet like him, wishing it could pull down the thunderclouds from the 9 heavens and smash the strange insect that had scared him to death in an instant. Oh! Feeling the nascent soul's anger and hatred, Xiao Hua suddenly understood. After a nascent soul cultivator reached the nascent soul stage, they would only have one nascent soul. After releasing the nascent soul would be placed in the nascent soul. Their own physical body would be in an awkward state where no one could control it. Of course, there were also some cultivators who had secret techniques that allowed them to control their physical body for a short period of time. It was just like when Taoist Jingxi was chasing him. Taoist Jingxi controlled her nascent soul to use a teleportation technique to attack him, while also controlling her physical body to fly in the air. Other people didn't have a second nascent soul, but Xiao Hua himself had one. Not to mention a second nascent soul, even a third nascent soul, a fourth nascent soul, even a 10th nascent soul had one. Thinking about how the green-robed Xiao Hua was muttering that he didn't have a suitable body to leave the space, this nascent soul, wasn't it tailor-made for these nascent souls? If it was possible, wouldn't Xiao Hua's several nascent souls be able to use this nascent soul as a body and come out every day to be free and unfettered for a while? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua actually beamed with joy. Fellow Taoist Xiao! Put in more effort! At this moment, although Sun Jian didn't know why Xiao Hua suddenly laughed, his heart was as calm as Xiao Hua's. He didn't forget to remind him as he looked at the strange insect that was expanding like a balloon. Hearing this, Xiao Hua said with a smile, Fellow Taoist son, rest assured. This Xiao doesn't have any other magical abilities, but this lightning-attracting technique can fill me up. Let's see how this Xiao will raise this strange insect. As he said this, another wave of lightning easily descended. Good! Sun Jian was overjoyed. He punched out, and the same dozens of chi pillars shot towards the strange insect. Countless waves of chi rolled around the strange insect's body, and countless lightning crackled. Bursts of gray light flickered, as if it was about to lose control of the light. Therefore, Sun Jian touched his chest and transmitted his voice. Fellow Taoist Xiao, looking at the strange insect's situation, I'm afraid it's about time. This one will trigger the righteous chi inside the strange insect's body. If your excellency has any method to detonate the lightning, that would be the best. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. He understood in his heart that the current him might be able to detonate the lightning, but the lightning that was still absorbed by the strange insect's body was probably no longer lightning. How could he still control it? If there are still some fire talismans in the space, I can give it a try. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's heart suddenly moved. He opened his mouth and spat out a wisp of spiritual fire. Along with Xiao Hua's divine fire art, the spiritual fire rushed into the void like a lively little bird and followed the lightning towards the strange insect. Xiao Hua was most likely the most familiar with this kind of sneaky person who hid the spiritual fire. However, just as Xiao Hua released the spiritual fire, a misty green light flashed in front of his eyes. It was precisely from Sun Jian's hand. Kunlun! Kunlun mirror? Xiao Hua looked at the familiar light, and shock appeared in his eyes. He almost blurted out, That's right, Sun Jian's hand was holding a treasured mirror. It was the Kunlun mirror that Xiao Hua was familiar with. It was almost the same as the ice-sea mirror in Xiao Hua's space. How could there be another Kunlun mirror? Xiaohua's heart was somewhat crazy. His own icy mirror was still incomplete. He didn't expect that a complete Kunlun mirror had already appeared in this unfamiliar hidden immortal continent. He saw Sun Jian holding the Kunlun mirror in his hand, and his hand formed a seemingly right but actually wrong seal. Several streams of righteous qi rushed into the Kunlun mirror, and the Kunlun mirror was suffused with a faint clear light. Then, that clear light, under Sun Jian's control, turned into a beam of light and rushed towards the strange insect. The beam of light was very strange. After rushing out of the Kunlun mirror for more than half a foot, it immediately disappeared. Looking at Sun Jian again, he threw the Kunlun mirror in his hand into the air, and raised the three-pointed double-edged sword in his hand high into the sky. A burst of ka-ka-ka-bum sounds came from his body, and the size of his Dharma body increased by more than 10 feet. Moreover, the golden light around his body became even brighter. Kill! Sun Jian stepped on the auspicious cloud and rushed towards the strange insect with the three-pointed double-edged sword. Buzz! The strange insect flapped its wings, and countless light shadows rushed out of the strange insect's body, wanting to block Sun Jian. However, those light shadows turned into fireflies under the three-pointed double-edged sword. Ayo! The strange insect roared and flew towards the three-pointed double-edged sword. One of its hind legs drew a line in the air, blocking the three-pointed double-edged sword. Unexpectedly, it made a golden sound. Sun Jian seemed to be defeated. His figure staggered, and the strange insect's sawtooth mouth took advantage of the situation to bite one of Sun Jian's arms. Not good! Xiaohua was shocked when he saw this. With a wave of his hands, he raised the wishful staff and smashed it towards the back of the strange insect. Kill! Sun Jian's voice was like spring thunder, and the golden light on his left arm flashed. The strange insect's sawtooth mouth couldn't bite him, and Sun Jian took advantage of the situation to swing his right hand, and the three-pointed double-edged sword was inserted into the back of the strange insect. Shwa! The three-pointed double-edged sword flashed with golden light, and a deep crack immediately appeared on the back of the strange insect. At the same time, a ray of clear light burst out from the strange insect's body, and the strange insect's body expanded rapidly. -12. Chapter 3392. Pun! With a loud bang, Xiaohua's wishful steel staff also arrived and smashed a large part of the strange insect's back. However, the gray mist that had previously covered the strange insect's body was now rising again. The strange insect's body fluctuated rapidly in the mist, sometimes big and sometimes small. As the strange insect's mist rapidly retreated into its body, the clear light was gradually obscured, and the scars of the three-pointed, double-edged swords slowly disappeared. When Sun Jian saw this, his eyes flashed with extreme panic. No one knew the power of the three-pointed, double-edged sword in his hand, and no one knew the power of the Kunlun mirror. These two treasures together could not kill the strange insect. How many methods in the world could threaten this strange insect? Just as Sun Jian was panicking, Xiaohua's eyes narrowed slightly, and the wishful steel staff in his hand quietly retracted. This was because he had already seen that the spirit fire that had just been sent into the air was sucked into the crescent-shaped groove by the strange insect along with a few strands of lightning. Fellow Immortal Xiao! Sun Jian's voice sounded in Xiaohua's ear, and his tone was very bitter. This Sun said too much? This strange insect is too powerful. I'm afraid it's an alien species. You and I should make other plans. While this strange insect has not yet completely refined the noble qi in its body. Right when Sun Wu hung his head dejectedly and was about to discuss how to escape with Xiaohua, a rumbling sound suddenly resounded from within the strange insect's body. The strange insect's body instantly expanded to a size of around 15 meters, and then the gray mist around it expanded even more before shrinking to a size of around 10 meters. But right after that, the strange insect's body expanded once more. Then there was no more. A spark was produced in the mouth of the strange insect, and the entire body of the strange insect was no longer under its control. It suddenly grew to the size of 100 feet. Pung! With a loud sound, the strange insect's body completely burst open, and countless flames rushed out of the strange insect's body. The power of the strange insect's explosion was not great, but the strange thing was that the entire space trembled at an extremely fast speed, and the four corners of the space flashed with a dark brilliance. The dark brilliance quickly dissipated, and the light of the entire space gradually dimmed. "Go!" Sun Jian roared first. "This place is about to collapse. Fellow Immortal Shao, please follow this sun out. If you are not careful, you will be implicated by the collapse into the void. I'm afraid it will be difficult to return to the space node." "All right." Xiao Hua scanned the area with his divine sense, but he didn't find any strange insect's soul essence. Knowing that he had indeed killed this strange insect, he didn't hesitate to agree and flew up with Sun Jian. But just as Xiao Hua was about to fly up, a strange feeling suddenly emerged from his heart. Xiao Hua almost instantly shouted, "Fellow Immortal Sun, be careful!" Then, his entire body abruptly flew backward. Even as he was flying, his entire waist was also rapidly leaning backwards. When Sun Jian saw Xiao Hua's sudden change, his complexion changed greatly. He thought that Xiao Hua wanted to take his void-penetrating beast and flee. Unconsciously, he swung the three-pointed, double-edged blade in his hand. Just as he was about to give chase, before Sun Jian's figure could fly, a loud sound rang out. A huge force came from the three-pointed, double-edged blade. Sun Jian's right arm went numb, and he almost couldn't hold the weapon in his hand. When he took a closer look, he found that one of the legs of the insect that had just exploded was stuck in his three-pointed, double-edged sword. Hiss! Sun Jian sucked in a breath of cold air. A feeling of surviving a disaster arose spontaneously. The appearance of this hind leg was so strange that he couldn't detect it at all. If it weren't for Xiao Hua's warning, he was afraid that he would have been stabbed by this hind leg. Even if he didn't die here, the injury he received would certainly be heavy. Thinking about his guess about Xiao Hua just now, Sun Jian's face unconsciously became slightly hot. At this moment, Xiao Hua also saw the result. The other hind leg of the strange insect also stretched out from the void and flew past Xiao Hua's lying chest. Xiao Hua's eyes were sharp and his hands were nimble. He raised his hand and used the heaven and earth sleeve technique to take this object into his space. Xiao Hua's figure didn't change, and his divine sense swept out once more. Meanwhile, Sun Jian opened his eyes, and a faint golden brilliance flashed out from his eyes as he looked around. After looking around for an entire moment, Sun Jian called out, "I'm afraid it's fine. Fellow Immortal Shao, let's leave quickly." Sun Jian seemed to be very familiar with this place. He flew to a place in the space, looked around, and raised the Kunlun mirror in his hand. Another beam of light shot out from the mirror and shot into the space. Then, Sun Jian looked at the three-pointed, double-edged sword in his hand and put away the strange insect's hind leg. He looked at the broken weapon with some heartache. He raised his hand and drew in the air. A shallow crack appeared in front of him. Sun Jian stretched out his hand and grabbed one side of the crack. As if he was pulling, the crack actually opened up. Sun Jian lowered his head and drilled into the crack. Xiao Hua, who was watching from the side, was dumbfounded. Damn it, this Sun Jian can actually tear space apart with his hand? If Xiao Hua didn't see it with his own eyes, he wouldn't dare to believe it. What kind of divine ability was this? Of course, Sun Jian's move couldn't be denied as a show of force. Xiao Hua couldn't help but be vigilant. After passing through several similar spaces, Sun Jian and Xiao Hua arrived at a small space filled with clouds. Sun Jian entered the space and found a cloud to stand on. His golden eyes swept across the entire space. Slowly, the golden light around him dissipated, and his avatar returned to its original state. Xiao Hua also stood several meters away from Sun Jian. His body flickered with brilliance, and he also withdrew his heavenly laws embodiment technique. Fellow Immortal Shao. Sun Jian looked at Xiao Hua and said, Where did this strange insect come from? Why is it so strange? Even if it was killed, how could it still attack us? Xiaohua smiled bitterly and cupped his hands. Fellow Immortal Son, this Xiao thanks Fellow Immortal for your help. If I didn't meet Fellow Immortal Son today, this Xiao wouldn't know whether this Xiao's luck would be good or bad. Sun Jian faintly glanced at Xiaohua and said with a double meaning, Unpredictable luck? That's not necessarily true. If Fellow Immortal Son didn't intervene in the end, that strange insect might not have been killed. Hee. Xiaohua knew that Sun Jian saw something strange, but he didn't point it out. He continued, As for Fellow Immortal Son's question about the origin of the strange insect, this Xiao isn't clear. It was just a chance encounter. And it seems like it really is an alien creature. Sun Jian nodded. This insect doesn't seem to have any soul. It's already so powerful, but when it was attacked just now, I didn't see any soul essence appear. If it was something from the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, I'm afraid it would have already used its soul essence to escape. That's right. This Xiao also examined it just now, and I didn't see any soul essence. Moreover, this Xiao has a magic treasure that's effective against souls, but it's ineffective against this insect. Xiaohua also nodded. In addition, this insect is addicted to vital energy. It's not afraid of the Taoists' vital energy of heaven and earth or the Confucian cultivators' vital energy. If Fellow Immortal Son didn't use the method of fighting poison with poison, we really wouldn't have been able to kill it. Fortunately, there's only one of this kind of alien creature. If there were another half of it, this son would also have to flee. Sun Jian smiled in a relaxed manner. Thinking about the matter of face that Sun Jian mentioned just now, Xiaohua also smiled. He stretched out his hand and said, Fellow Immortal Son, do you have a Qiankun bag? I can return the void-penetrating beast to you. Sun Jian raised his eyebrows and was rather surprised. He was originally thinking about how to ask Xiaohua and what price he should pay to get the void-penetrating beast back. He didn't expect that after a few words, Xiaohua would directly ask to return it. Many thanks, Fellow Immortal. Sun Jian naturally wouldn't be negligent. He touched his chest and took out a Qiankun bracelet and handed it to Xiaohua. Xiaohua also took out a small Qiankun bag and pretended to put the void-penetrating beast into the Qiankun bracelet. He handed it to Sun Jian and said, All right, it's returned to its owner. After receiving the Qiankun bracelet, Sun Jian scanned it with his vital sense. Sure enough, he saw that the void-penetrating beast was still inside without a single hair missing. Sun Jian almost didn't dare to believe his eyes. He hurriedly said, Fellow Immortal Xiao, please wait a moment. After I take out the void-penetrating eye, I'll return the other things to you. This is what I promised earlier. Ha, do as you wish. Xiaohua chuckled. Actually, he was already muttering in his heart. Even if you want to take the void-penetrating eye, why don't you first leave the spatial meridian and arrive at hidden Immortal Continent? But after only a short moment, Sun Jian spoke with a difficult expression. Fellow Immortal Xiao, I have no choice but to go back on my word once more. Oh, why? Xiaohua was stunned and asked curiously. Sun Jian raised the Qiankun bracelet in his hand and explained. Even though the void-penetrating eye on the void-penetrating beast is undamaged, the void-penetrating beast's vital essence has been completely exhausted. It's not suitable to take out the void-penetrating eye now. Only after the void-penetrating beast recovers its vital essence can the void-penetrating eye be taken out in perfect condition. So, I can't return the things I promised Fellow Immortal now. Otherwise, all of my painstaking efforts would be for naught. Haha, so that's how it is. Xiaohua thought in his heart, and hurriedly waved his hand. I understand. I'll give it to Fellow Immortal. I don't have the qualifications to make a fuss about it with Fellow Immortal. That won't do. Unexpectedly, Sun Jian shook his head in all seriousness. How could I be someone that goes back on my word? After I take out the void-penetrating eye, I will give the other parts to Fellow Immortal. However, Fellow Immortal will have to wait for a few more years. It's fine. Xiao Hua had already obtained a lot from the Void Meridian, so he did not want to argue with Sun Jian anymore. He nodded and said, "When you and I return to the hidden Immortal continent, fellow Immortal will give me the address. I will go and find fellow Immortal when I have time in the future. Fellow Immortal should tell me the location of the cave." Sun Jian laughed. "I don't know when I can return this item to you." "Fine." Xiao Hua laughed. "If nothing unexpected happens, I will be the imperial advisor of you province's Jiang country in the future. Fellow Immortal will know if you ask around." "All right, I'll remember it." Sun Jian nodded and then said embarrassedly, "In addition, there is no way out from the spatial node here to the hidden Immortal continent. Fellow Immortal Xiao, you can either return to the hidden Immortal continent through the passage you came from, or go out nearby. However, when I was chasing after the void-penetrating beast, a large-scale void storm appeared in this spatial node, causing the entire node to be extremely unstable. If nothing unexpected happens, it won't be long before this place collapses, and this spatial node won't exist either. Therefore, if I were fellow Immortal, I definitely wouldn't take the risk and would make plans after leaving." -12. Chapter 3393. Ah! Xiao Hua was stunned. He was the one who added fuel to the fire in the void storm, so it was normal for the space node to be unstable. However, he didn't agree that it would immediately collapse. However, he still asked curiously, "Fellow Immortal Son, are you not going to return to the hidden Immortal continent?" "Yes, I have other things to do, so I won't be returning for the time being," Sun Jian replied. Xiao Hua was in a difficult position. He smiled bitterly and said, "Then where is the nearest space node?" At this point, Xiao Hua suddenly understood. If it's not the hidden Immortal continent, then it must be the Pure Land and the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Since Sun Jian chased the void-penetrating beast to this place, if I'm not wrong, the nearest should be the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. The Pure Land world! Sun Jian's words killed Xiao Hua's guess. "If fellow Immortal is willing, I can send fellow Immortal to the Pure Land world. However, I'm not sure where in the Pure Land world this place is." "Ha!" When Xiao Hua heard this, he almost laughed out loud. What was his biggest wish after arriving at the three continents? Wasn't it just going to the Pure Land world? Wasn't it just to wake Jian Lure up? Now, he could actually arrive at the Pure Land world without using any heavenly steeds or crossing the ocean. What was there for Xiao Hua to be unhappy about? Xiao Hua suppressed the ecstasy in his heart and cupped his hands. "If so, fellow Immortal, please send me to the Pure Land world. Fellow Immortal, you're a Taoist disciple. You have to be careful in the Buddhist sect's territory." Sun Jian didn't say much. He activated the Kunlun mirror and brought Xiao Hua across several spaces. As they flew, he reminded, "Buddhist sect's bald donkeys are people who don't mean what they say. Don't let them see through you. If I don't say it myself, how would they know that I'm a Taoist?" Xiao Hua smiled and touched his bald head. Sun Jian smiled and nodded. "That's true. If fellow Immortal wasn't wearing a Taoist robe, I would really think that fellow Immortal is a Buddhist sect's disciple." As he spoke, Sun Jian took out the Kunlun mirror. He waved the three-pointed, double-edged blade again, and a small gap appeared in the void. As the gap appeared, a biting cold wind blew in, followed by fresh air. "Fellow Immortal Xiao, please!" Sun Jian put away his weapon and flew a few hundred feet away. He made way for the gap and cupped his hands with a smile. "The green hills never change and the green waters flow forever. Fellow Immortal Son, we'll meet again." Xiao Hua knew Sun Jian's intentions. He cupped his hands in salute and stepped out of the gap. Then, lightning flashed around his body as he flew into the distance. The gap high up in the sky gradually closed up. Sun Jian's eyes looked through the gap at the spot where Xiao Hua had disappeared. As he looked at the swirling snowflakes, a thoughtful expression flashed in his eyes. He muttered to himself, "This Xiao Hua is a kind and righteous person. Previously, he did not flee by himself. Later on, he even helped me kill the strange insect. In the end, he even completely handed over the void-penetrating beast to me. His cultivation may not be as good as mine, but if we really fight, he may not necessarily lose. He still has the void-penetrating beast in his hands. If he threatens this sun with it, it will really make things difficult for this sun. Void-penetrating eye, void-penetrating eye, this true monarch has finally obtained you. When I refine you, my divine power will definitely reach a higher level. At that time, even if I have to face Saint Wen, I won't be afraid. Sun Jian's figure disappeared, and the gap also gradually closed up. Finally, he disappeared among the palm-sized snowflakes. After 2 hours, Xiaohua's figure slowly appeared on the left side of the gap. He also had a thoughtful expression on his face. He also pinched his chin with his hand and looked at the gap. Who is this Sun Jian? He is almost a Taoist spirit-severing stage cultivator. Especially that Kunlun mirror and the three-pointed, double-edged sword that can break the void. They are definitely not ordinary. Could it be that this Sun Jian is a member of a first-class family? While talking to himself, Xiaohua patted his forehead with his hand, and the Dharma eye slowly opened. However, Xiaohua didn't use the heavenly eye. Instead, the silver-white eye slowly turned into a pure silver-white. The silver-white eye slowly rotated, and then a silver brilliance fell on the space where the gap was. Open! Xiaohua shouted in a deep voice. The silver light beam roared, and with the rotation of the light beam, a small gap in the void also appeared in the air. Ha! I see! Xiaohua was overjoyed. He stretched out an eye and quietly looked inside. He smiled and said, "The delusion breaker Dharma eye has such an effect. If it wasn't for the void-penetrating eye of the void-penetrating beast, this Shao wouldn't have thought of it. With the Dharma eye, this Shao can remember the location of this snow mountain. After Lu'er is settled, this Shao can also return to the hidden immortal continent through the space meridian." Then, Xiaohua turned his hand again, and a fist-sized silver bead appeared in his left hand. It was condensed from the void-penetrating beast's light beam that rushed into the space transformed by the delusion-breaker Dharma eye in Xiaohua's left hand. This is the essence of the void-penetrating beast that Sun Jian was talking about. Xiaohua swept his gaze, and sent the silver bead into the Dharma eye imprint on his forehead. He said with a smile, "If this Shao can refine the essence of this void-penetrating beast, I'm afraid that the delusion-breaker Dharma eye and heavenly eye will rise to another level." Ha! Xiaohua was really happy. He raised his head and laughed loudly. That laughter shook the surrounding snowflakes into powder. Xiaohua thought for a moment, and looked at the snowflakes that covered the sky, which blocked his vision like this. It even covered the snow mountain that he was on. Then, he directly descended, and used his divine sense to mark the snow mountain with his divine sense. Only then did he release his Buddhist sense, and looked around. He casually found a piece of clothing that wasn't a Taoist robe from the space and put it on. Then, he didn't fly far, but landed on the snow mountain. He stepped on the snowy ground with large strides, and walked down the mountain. Because in his Buddhist sense, he already saw that there was a temple built on the mountainside of the snow mountain. The snow was very heavy, and the snowflakes were the size of a palm. They fell on Xiaohua's bare head, and also fell on Xiaohua's nondescript clothing. They even fell on the foot of the snow mountain. The snow on the foot of the mountain was at least a foot thick, and under the layer of snow, it was extremely smooth. It was obviously a thick layer of ice. In this kind of weather, ordinary cultivators would release their true qi to protect themselves. Cultivators who cultivated to the gold core realm would have a protective golden light. Even if they didn't do it deliberately, they would still be able to block all the dust, raindrops, and snowflakes outside their body. However, Xiaohua was an exception. Although he didn't like dust, sometimes he also liked raindrops and snowflakes very much. Just like now, he withdrew the protective golden light, and didn't even leak a trace of true qi. Previously, he slightly revealed his Confucian cultivation base, but now, he was completely concealed under the secret soul cultivation technique. He was like an ordinary young man, walking step by step on the snow mountain. His whole body was already snowy white. If Xiaohua wasn't walking, others would definitely not see such a white dot in this vast white world. The snow mountain was extremely high, and the small temple was built halfway up the snow mountain. Xiaohua walked down the faintly discernible mountain path step by step, and it took him no less than 2 hours. During these 2 hours, Xiaohua's heart was like the world in the snow. The dust in his heart was slowly washed away by his slow steps. Even the impetuousness in the void and the bloodthirst from using the demon world's blood-drop paradise gradually subsided. Once again, Xiaohua's state of mind was like an ancient well without ripples. Although Xiaohua couldn't see the nascent soul in his lower dantian, Xiaohua could clearly sense that the newborn nascent soul was also sitting cross-legged in the original location of the nebula in his lower dantian. Its hands were forming hand seals, and it was cultivating with its 5 hearts facing the sky. Seeing the corner of the small temple on the side of the pine tree not far away, the corner of Xiaohua's mouth curled up. He looked left and right, and the path under his feet had already appeared. The place covered in snow was obviously a bit shorter than the other places. Xiaohua stepped on the path, but in his heart, he secretly thought, "This Zhao's nascent soul is a bit strange. Not to mention that all the meridians in my body are opened, even the image of my nascent soul is faintly discernible. Previously, when it climbed out of my body and arrogantly pointed at the world, I could still see its shadow, but when it entered my dantian, it disappeared. Also, although this nascent soul looks like me, but why does it look like a huge nebula most of the time? Even the color of its skin is very different. Not to mention when it's hidden, when it's revealed, it's not necessarily black and white or 7 colors. As the saying goes, the appearance is born from the heart. This Zhao's Dharma idol is naturally this Zhao's image, and that spiritual idol Dharma body is also the image of this Zhao's nascent soul. Naturally, this nascent soul should also be this Zhao's image. This is without a doubt, but why does it often give this Zhao the illusion that it's a nebula? Nebula? Thinking of the nebula, Xiaohua's body trembled, and he was stunned on the spot. The heavenly Dao starry sky? Isn't the heavenly Dao starry sky made up of all the nebulas? In other words, the nascent soul is not born from me, but from my Dao foundation. The nascent soul is the result of my cultivation. I have succeeded in comprehending the heavenly Dao. Although it's only in the so-called heaven glimpse realm, this heaven glimpse realm is also integrated into my Dao foundation, and now it's manifested in this nascent soul. Heavenly Dao, oh heavenly Dao, only the heavenly Dao is the pinnacle of my Dao cultivation. Even if I cultivate a nascent soul, I still have to rely on the nascent soul to strengthen my Dao foundation, and use the nascent soul to comprehend the heavenly Dao. Since the foundation of the Dao sect is the heavenly Dao, then what is the end of the Dao sect cultivator's cultivation? Also, the foundation of soul cultivation is the 9 heavens of spirit origin? What is the pinnacle of soul cultivation? Xiaohua, who had made great progress in his Dao sect cultivation, couldn't help but have a shocking thought. The foundation of Confucian cultivation is the 5 Qis unification? What is the pinnacle of Confucian cultivation? The foundation of Buddhism, what is it? It can't be Buddha's Sarira, right? The pinnacle of Buddhism is Buddha? Is it the fruit of Buddhism? Dang. Right at this moment, a muffled sound was like a blow to the head. Then, a burst of ice-cold energy fell from the sky, and some even fell on Xiaohua's neck. Ah? Xiaohua was startled, and he hastily raised his head, only to see that in front of him was a strange tree that was 9 zhang tall. When he lowered his head to think, he bumped into the tree trunk, and with this collision, the snow on the strange tree's branches and leaves fell down one after another, revealing a half-Qi-long leaf that looked like a heart, and also like an eye. 12. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.